I'd like to call to order the Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners from our recess meeting. As a reminder for everyone that that's with us today, if you have a cell phone or other mobile device, please make sure it's on silent or vibrate so that it does not go off during the meeting. We would all appreciate that. So if you'll take a moment to check that. Also, we are going to do, the Board of Commissioners are going to start with the action items from our retreat, and then I will, at that time, I'll have you to bring your board into, unless you want to bring it into session now. Do you, and key up.
I think it's proper for you to handle your business,
Okay.
And whenever that runs its course and we're done, then we can have our joint meeting.
Okay, and that's what I had intended. Also, for those of you sitting around the tables, sometimes when we have our meetings, we will go ahead and turn those extra microphones on just so that they're on. You'll notice that they light up when you turn it on, so please make sure you turn your microphone on. If you are sharing, because we don't have enough individual microphones, please make sure that if you go to speak that you lean towards the microphone, pull it towards you, however you need to do, so that you are talking into a microphone, okay? I just wanted to make sure that was the case. Sometimes we forget to turn the microphones on and then you're not picked up as well. So if you would just please make sure you do that, and if your neighbor starts talking and you realize the microphone's not turned on, just reach over and turn it on, and nobody will have a problem with that. So just want to make sure that we talked about that to begin with. Welcome to everybody that's here today. We appreciate you all being here. Commissioners, we have three resolutions which we received from the Cabarrus County Board of Education that we've discussed a couple times so far for us to look at today. The first one is the request from them for the staff compensation. And I don't have a copy of the actual resolution. I'm sorry, I left my notebook down in the car. Mike's got it right here, so I can. There we go. So if you have your notebook, Commissioners, it is on page 144. And they have requested of us to provide a 1.5% increase in salary. So at this time, I would open it up to any discussion that the commissioners would like to start with.
Well, first, I know that we had mentioned this before about Chairman Poole recusing herself from the vote, so I will make a motion to excuse Chairman Poole for recuse Chairman Poole from a vote regarding the staff compensation.
Okay, there is a motion. I also, let me wait. There's a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, there is a motion and a second. I would like to interject that in the event there is a motion, if the request is split in any way, then I would appreciate the opportunity to vote on classified. If such a, I don't have no idea what motion might be made, but if that comes up, I would appreciate the opportunity to be considered for that. So, okay. All those in favor of recusing me from the vote, salary vote, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So again, at this time, I would open it up to the four of you. Anyone that would like to start, either with comments or with a motion.
Madam Chairman, I would make a motion that we approve the request from the school board to include also Kannapolis City Schools. One change from the request, I think the request is written, asks it to be retroactive to the beginning of this current school year. I would move that we make that effective at the beginning of our next budget year, which I think would July 1st would be the correct date on that. That would give them an opportunity to use that as a tool for recruitment and retention while still giving us some flexibility over the funds that would be expended for that to deal with some maintenance and construction issues.
And just to make sure, did you mention the amount the amount would be? Just make sure it's in your motion.
I would propose the amount as requested, which was 1.5%, if I remember correctly.
I just wanted to make sure that you had
Right,
stated that.
and that would be applicable for both school systems.
Okay. Okay, so there is a motion on the table. Is there a second to that motion? Okay, there not being a motion, that motion dies for lack of a second.
I would like to move that we approve a 15% increase for the supplement pay for the Cabarrus County school system as well as the Kannapolis City school system, with there being a threshold of $70,000. So any salary that is under $70,000, encompassing all employees of the Cabarrus County school system as well as the Kannapolis City school system, receive a 15% increase on the supplement pay, and that being effective immediately through the end of the year, not retroactive.
You mean a 1.5%?
No, he's talking about the supplement.
Just the
Oh,
supplement,
just
not
the
the entire
supplement.
salary.
Do
Okay, I got you.
I have no idea what, just for curiosity's sake, since I can't vote on it, do you have a dollar amount that would equate to? Because I have no idea what that equates to.
I do not have that from the Cabarrus school system, although I have requested that. I do have that for the city of Kannapolis.
Madam Chairman, we do have that, and I believe Kelly has that, but I wanted to just mention that maintenance staff does not receive supplements, just so you didn't ask the question, but before we move on, I wanted to at least interject that. But we do have the number, I think.
It's $1.2 million.
1.2 million
million.
for Cabarrus County Schools? I
But
want to
maintenance
make
will
sure
get
that
a
our,
raise, right?
No,
Huh?
no, sir. Not with that motion. No, sir. Maintenance and a lot of other people, clerical, custodial, teacher assistants, Kids Plus, child nutrition staff, most all of our staff that are, the only people that will get a raise based on the motion that you just made will be our teachers and our certified staff, certified staff including principals that get a supplement. Sorry, didn't mean to do that.
I just want to make sure that, because I just want to make sure I have my notes right, okay? So your motion is that any certified, which would be the teachers,
No, my motion was all school system employees.
okay, well,
Right, and now I understand, and that's why I've requested that information, so we could have the breakdown of that, and I never did receive that.
But that
Okay,
includes the
so-
maintenance workers.
are you, I just want to make sure that I understand and everybody understands. Okay, your motion was a 15% of the supplement amount, okay, for effective immediately for Cabarrus County and Kannapolis City Schools employees who make $70,000 or less, that those would be the ones that would get the raise.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay,
So
and,
you're leaving out maintenance, custodian? Yes, on. You're leaving out the maintenance people. You're leaving out secretaries. You're leaving out the custodians. Correct?
Yes, sir.
I've got an idea. They did not, apparently Chris asked for the information. They did not give him that information. I would like to move forward and make a bold statement to our teachers that we are with them, that we support them, that we want this money going into the classrooms. And so I think we should vote on this today and then come back and look at the maintenance people. I'd be happy to take a look at that as well. But I would like to get, we have talked about this for a long time. The request has been out there for quite a while. And I would like to send a strong message to our teachers that this board supports them and that we support public education. And so I think we can go forward with this and then come back and look at the maintenance workers and the other people that do not receive supplements in a different motion or at a different time.
Why can't they be put in this?
Well, we don't have any numbers on what that is, Commissioner Burge. That's the problem. Chris had asked for those things and he didn't
It's a 1.5% increase, correct?
No, so the thing about it is,
hang
we
on, I'm
give
sorry, Jason.
supplements.
One second, just 1 second. You're fine, I'm not going to cut you off completely. I was trying to restate his motion to make sure that I understood it and Megan understood it. So we do have a motion on the floor. Is there a second to Chris's motion?
Not like it is, no.
Okay.
So
Unless you
I'm
want
just
to.
asking, is there a second to that motion? Okay, so then it will die for lack of a second.
So let's look at this. We pay Kannapolis one thing. The teachers are state employees. The state pays their salary. We give them a supplement, and what we control is their supplement. So a 1.5% raise for Kannapolis City is going to be different than a 1.5% raise for Cabarrus County because it's not in the terms that we pay it in. We pay it in the supplement. So our motion needs to be based on the supplement, not on the overall pay, because there are too many different factors that go across all of it. So what we need to look at is how we can increase our supplement in a way that sends a strong message to our teachers. As I look back through our annual amount of supplement history, I see that going back from present time until 2008, they had one raise, which was 5%, and it looks like in 2014, by this sheet, a 1.5% supplement increase in 2014. Is that right? So I think really it would send a tremendously bold message to our teachers if we give them triple the amount of the biggest raise that they've ever had in their supplement. And that's our obligation, and that's what we pay. So let's do a 15% increase.
Okay, is this your motion?
No, this is something I'm just.
Okay.
So,
I just want to try to write down
yeah.
and keep track of you guys.
So we can do a 15% supplement increase. The problem is the maintenance workers don't receive a supplement. So my proposal, well, I'll make it as a motion this way. I would like to make a motion that the teachers receive a 15% increase in their supplement. I'm sorry. I would like to make a motion that any person in the school system making up to $70,000 receive a 15% increase in their supplement, and then have Ms. Kletz figure out what the equivalent of that is for our employees making under $70,000 that do not receive a supplement, and we will look at increasing their salaries by that amount.
That includes all the other workers.
All the other workers, yes.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Does your motion right now, but you're leaving open what that amount would be for the, you've got certified would get 15%, certified employees, same thing he said, up to 70,000 would get a 15% increase on their supplement.
That's right.
Is your motion effective immediately?
Effective immediately.
what he said.
And we would prorate
Okay.
that equal to the amount of pay that they have left for the rest of the year. So in other words, if they're 60% through the school year in pay, they would get 40% of this for the rest of the year, and then next year they would get 100% of this.
Okay, a supplement is paid in halves. So one half has been paid so far, so there is another half still to be paid.
And this is going to be an increase on that supplement, so
I just
based-
want to make
yeah,
sure that
yeah.
everybody understands. So are you saying, in essence, a 15%, if they're under 70,000, we already got that
Mm-hmm.
squared away, that for persons who receive a supplement, they would get the equivalent of 15% on the remaining portion of the supplement that they are due for this year?
I think that part of that supplement has already been earned. So it would be prorated based on the amount of outstanding pay that they have left, equal to that amount. So if they have been paid 60% of their pay, then it would be equal to whatever they have remaining left on their pay.
Okay, I was trying to explain, the supplement is.
I understand how the supplements,
Why-
this number would be related to their pay that's left from the state.
Okay, and then for, okay, I have a follow-up question in a minute.
Okay.
Because we have to deal with that. Okay, then you were adding a second part that had to do with the classified staff, which you don't have an amount for that at this time. You're saying that you want both school systems to, how are they going to calculate what that amount is? Is it the average amount being paid to the, for the supplement amount? Is that what you're trying to come, because there's a scale on the supplement. I'm
Right.
just trying to make sure everybody understands what your motion is.
And the
'Cause I don't.
scale on the supplement is related to different certification, or different classifications, right? And there's different pay associations with those classifications, correct? Okay. So why don't we put for purposes of this motion, put the classified people on that scale of pay that the teachers are on, just for purpose of identifying their wage, and then pay them the equivalent of the supplement that
Okay.
the person on that.
I'll be honest with you, I think that is a mathematical nightmare to figure out. So, can I ask a different way?
Was the, on the-
You have hourly employees, and they're getting paid whatever X number of dollars an hour. What they asked for was a 1.5% raise.
Okay.
So, would you be willing to do a certain just percentage raise for them, which is a much easier calculation than trying to figure out where they would fit on a supplement scale? Because I think that gets to be, if I'm in maintenance, depending on what I do in maintenance, I may have licensures because that's what I do. If I'm an electrician, I'm going to have some licensures that I'm not going to have if I am a secretary. I'm just saying, I'm
Sure.
just trying to make it easy enough on them that they can actually pull some data and give us the number to work with. And that's why there's a problem equating the two. They don't really.
well, was the maintenance people and the custodians and the secretaries and all that not included in this first request?
In their
They were.
request, everybody was
Then why
included.
can't we just go back and give them a 1.5% increase in pay and give the teachers theirs?
Because a 15% increase in supplement pay is not a
I'm
1.5%.
not talking about
What
supplement,
is
I'm talking
the-
about the hourly workers getting a 1.5% increase in pay.
Do we,
That's what they asked for.
are the hourly employees of they are school system employees, right? They're not our county employees.
No, but most of them, the majority of them are paid out of the local dollars that we pay. You have to have certain positions in order to operate. However, the state of North Carolina does not fund those, and the county ends up funding a lot of those. So can I ask you, because I really don't know, what is the average increase that, in the supplement that you're looking at?
I don't know. They haven't sent us the numbers. I mean, Chris
Well, I
apparently
mean,
asked
you've
for the
got
numbers.
supplement, but you have the scale, the supplement
Okay.
scale.
The supplement
So if you
scale,
were doing 15% of a supplement scale, what kind of an increase are you looking at?
well, there's different numbers across, but there's probably 20 different.
Yeah, there are a bunch. Pick one of them.
The most expensive one is
Well, let's go somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
Because you're not going to do the most expensive. They're 70,000 or more.
$2,510 is the middle.
$2,510.
Yes,
Okay.
15%.
So, but you said you're only going to do it on 40% of that they,
Well, for next year, it would be 100%. So
Yeah, but
just let's
for
not deal
this
with
year.
prorated for right now and
$376.
$376.
$376 would be the annualized increase for that particular level.
Correct.
Okay. But you're looking at doing it on less than half of that, if it's 60% that they've already been paid.
We're looking to do it
Math.
on 100% of it for 100% of the work that they do. That's what we're looking to give them the increase in supplement on all of the work that they do for the rest of the year, is what we're looking to do.
Yeah, but I understand that. The mathematical calculation is that they have to take an annual salary, figure out how much has been paid so far, and you said 60% have been paid so far. That would leave 40% that they're still going to be paid because they're going to work out the rest of the year.
Right.
So what you're saying is that for this year, okay, instead of a $376 raise for that particular level, it would be
150.
$150.
Through the rest of the year.
Right.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to get at, where you were going with it. So,
If we want to go with Steve's motion and make it active as of July 1st, that might take away some headache, but I think the teachers would rather have $150 this year than nothing. So, we can go with Commissioner Morris's idea of not giving them anything this year and waiting until July to do that, but I would rather give it to them right now, to be honest with you. So it's a little bit more of a headache, but it's a headache that I'm willing to go through because I'd like for them to get some more money. $100 is some meals out and things like that.
and the 1.5% that they requested, do you know how much that would have been for that roughly for that person?
If
The 1.5%.
your total request was 2.9 million, and I believe that she said, here, I think here's a way that we can do it. The total request was 2.9 million, and I believe Kelly said that it's 1.2 million is the amount right now. So if you take a proportion of that, it is
It's approximately 750 that Kelly just calculated.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out
Sure.
where we are. I mean, somebody here is going to have to make the math work, so I'm trying to make sure there's enough explanation so that we don't leave here today and
well, if
there's a big
1.5
question mark as to where it's going, so.
If
or what it is.
1.5% produces 2.9 million, then why don't we do a 0.75% increase in pay for all others not receiving a supplement, and that would be about equivalent.
Okay, hang on. You want to do 3/4 of 1%, 0.75%. Say that again?
0.75 on all employees not receiving a supplement, up to $70,000.
Do you want to use the term classified?
Classified
they'll know-
employees.
Or hourly, one or the other, so they'll
Or
know.
non-certified if you prefer.
Because if you, the way you just said it, the ones that you excluded above 70,000 didn't get that one, so they might get in there. I'm just asking how you want to phrase it.
I want it to be classified employees up to $70,000.
Up to and including? I don't mean to mince words, but
It's $1.
I know that, but, you know, somebody's going to get $70,003 in their salary, and they're
Let's
going to
do
go,
up to
"Dang,
$70,000.
Classified, up to 70,000. Okay.
And that will be
So-
triple the biggest raise that this commission has given them in close to a decade, it looks like.
Okay, let me see if I can, let me ask again on, okay, I got the classified part. Your motion is, and is that's starting immediately from this point forward, because not all of them are 12-month employees, but you're saying in there, the next paycheck, which you get paid at the end of the month. So starting with the February paycheck, is that what you're saying?
Starting with the February paycheck.
Okay. So for classified or hourly employees, 0.75%, 0.75% raise to classified employees who make 70,000 or less, beginning with their February paycheck.
Yes.
Okay, that's one part.
Okay.
Okay. Second part is for certified employees, which are the ones that get supplements. Okay. Certified employees, a 15% raise on their supplement for employees making under $70,000 a year, prorated for the rest of this year.
Yes.
For both Cabarrus County Schools and Kannapolis City Schools.
Yes.
Okay. The total amount is somewhere, I don't know, 1.5 million, somewhere in that range is somewhere where you're shooting for.
I think that's about the number. Yeah, $1.5 million.
Yeah, I'm going off for the 1.2. Well, it may be just a little bit more than that,
Yeah.
but once they do the math, they can figure that part out. Okay? Hey, hang on. I'm glad I don't have to, I'm glad y'all recuse me now. I'm just trying to figure out how to make sure I say it right. Okay, for our two finance people, do you need any other information to be able to understand what his motion is? Okay, do you think from that you'll be able to make a calculation? Pam, is there anything else that you would need to know?
As long as she's happy, I'm good.
Okay, did you have something? I agree. Okay. Oh, I wasn't, we didn't get all the way to there yet, okay? So, do I need to repeat what Jason's motion is? Everybody, okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any other discussion on the parts of the motion?
Madam Chairman, I would have a question, and I don't know, I have a great deal of confidence in our two mathematical ladies sitting next to each other down here, but if I were if I understand correctly, this motion would give our folks that do not receive a supplement half of what has been requested. The request was for 1.5%, and the motion calls for 0.75%. So we're cutting that in half, the request. On the supplements, I think if I were a teacher, this would be my question. Okay, if I got a 1.5% increase in salary, as was requested, what would the difference be? And I know it's different for everybody, but if we could just pick out one middle of the road one, what would the difference be with 15% of my supplement? Is that going to be more or less? I don't know.
Okay, based on what Jason said a minute ago, you said, but you both said, you said the average on the 1.5% was $750?
If you take the average teacher salary, it's about.
If you take the average teacher salary with the average supplement, then the average increase at 1.5% would be $750. Taking the one that Jason, which is about in the middle, you said, right?
Yes.
He said 376.
So
Does that help?
basically, we're cutting that in half as well. But it sounds a lot better if we're saying 3 times the increase in supplement than we've ever given, but we're actually taking half of what was requested. Am I
There's-
right, financial ladies? Okay.
Commissioner Morris, we
Okay.
don't pay their
Can I-
salaries. We don't pay they're employees of the state, and we give them something in addition to that, as a way to say thank you and as a way that we prioritize our teachers. And so looking at what we pay them as opposed to what their employer actually pays them is a much better marker for what our contribution is to them than what their employer owes them.
I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, but at the end of the day, I would want to know if I'm going to go home with $1 in my pocket or $3 in my pocket. And the point that I was making is the proposal or the request that came from the school board was double what your motion calls for. So I just want to make sure that we are very clear that we're cutting their request in half. And that's what I was trying to ascertain exactly what it would be, because the way the motion is stated, it's a bit confusing, I think, to people watching at home. They're going to end the meeting saying they asked for 1.5% and they gave them 15%. And so that's what I wanted to clear up, what the actual amounts would be.
And just to be clear, the people watching at home should understand that the school board asked us for a 33% increase in the supplement pay in this one motion.
And the supplement pay, if you don't look at their overall, I think that the people watching at home, if they make $50,000 a year or $20,000 a year or $10,000 a year, the bottom line increase is what they're going to consider as a raise. I don't think they're particularly concerned with where it comes from. They're concerned about what they've got to make their mortgage payment and buy their food and those kind of things. So I wanted to make sure we had that clearly spelled out, exactly what we're talking about.
Okay.
The simplest way of looking at it is anyone that makes under $70,000 is going to get an increase. So, we can talk about supplements or certified, non-certified, but anyone watching or anyone that is curious, the simple way of explaining it, we can try to make it as confusing as possible, but the simplest way is if you're making under $70,000, you'll get a pay increase. And, I know this has been confusing, but as I said, I did request these numbers from the Cabarrus County School System. I've made 2 requests in the past couple of days for information that I have not received. I called Kannapolis City Schools this morning. I had information within 30 minutes. So I'm not sure, where the hangup is, but that's where, whenever we're discussing this and, making motions or deciding how this factors into our budget, it would be imperative that we have this information before we get to a meeting. So as I said, something needs to be worked out within the Cabarrus County School System where, whenever information is requested before we get to a meeting, that we have that information.
Okay. May I interject, because I was just informed, and and Jason and Larry, I will ask you both specifically as making the motion, seconding the motion. Will you make your motion for Cabarrus County Schools only, the way that it's currently stated? Because Kannapolis City Schools pays a supplement to all of their employees. So I would want you to do a separate motion, which I think seems to be where you went with this one, that all the employees in Kannapolis City Schools would get the 0.75%. I'm sorry, the 15% on the supplement, since that's what they do. So, but if we can just do it two separate motions, I think that might make it clearer.
How
Is
did
that
we
okay?
how did we wind up going from 1.5 to 7, half of that? How did we get to that point? I didn't realize we got
That was the motion
there.
that Commissioner Osterreich made.
Well, I unseconded it then.
It's
I
not
thought we was going to
1.5.
1.5% increase for the teachers and a 1.5% in salary. All this other stuff, you know, if 1.5% of $100, you know how much that is. Well, if you're hourly paid or if you're a teacher, 1.5% of their salary is whatever their salary is.
Well,
And I want to give it all
That's
of
why
it.
I was trying to rephrase that's why I was trying to rephrase and make sure that we all
Right.
understood where the motion was.
And Larry, I
So-
understand what you're saying, but you know, the 1.5% is on their entire salary. We don't pay teachers' salary entirely. We just pay a small amount of their
So
salary.
we giving them 1.5% on the $800 and some dollars?
With the motion, the way it is, all school system employees, whether it's teachers, you know, the janitorial staff, bus drivers, everyone will receive an increase.
Hey, and let me restate.
Let me show you something, Larry.
You
This
talking
is
about on their supplement.
on their supplement. So, for instance, in 2014, this is the portion
Is that what they
Cabarrus
asked,
County
is
pays.
that what the school board asked for?
No, they asked us to give them a pay increase on
No,
parts
what
that
we
don't
asked for is
pay.
in the motion that's on the screen in front of you.
You asked for a 1.5% increase for salary.
We don't pay all
Correct.
of their salary.
I'm not talking about what we pay. I'm talking about what they asked for.
We
The
asked for it
supplement
to
can be
based
considered
on
a
the
salary. So the supplement can be considered a salary
Well, I don't
from
see
the
where you
local
are.
government.
How much you actually giving them, money-wise, if you do
On
that?
average,
You get 'em-
a classified person with Jason's motion would get $376.
A year?
Yes, for this year. Yes, no, for a year.
Yeah, for this
Sorry,
year.
No.
that's for a
For the
year.
answer.
He asked to do it prorated, which would be 40% of that for this year, because there's 4 months left in the school year. So, I don't have a calculator. His motion is on average $376 increase for teachers, administrators who make under $70,000. Now, for the hourly employees, it would be 0.75%, 0.75% on their annual salary. And that'll vary based on what they do, if they're paid under 70,000 again.
Well,
That
I-
varies based on wherever they are now.
I thought we
So,
was basing it on their salary. I didn't know we was basing it on their supplement.
The-
That's what his motion is.
The employees of the school system get paid by the state. And Larry, we give them, for average, we give them $2,500 because we want to show that we would like to give them something more than what the state pays them. So in 2009, we gave them a 5% increase on that $2,500 number. At the time, it was $2,472. They have not had another increase until 2014. At that time, we gave them a 1.5% pay increase. So I am saying, let's do 10 times the amount of their last pay increase from us, which is 15%. That is in line with what, as a commission, our obligation is. In fact, it's far more than what we've done as a commission in the past. Now, I have heard, in fact, I have a magazine article back here, and I have multiple news articles that Governor McCrory has said explicitly that he is going to give the teachers a raise in the budget this year. That is, their total salary is the obligation of the state. They are employees of the
I
state.
know who pays them. I ain't concerned about who pays them.
So,
I'm concerned about, you talking about giving them $300 and some a year above what they're making now, which is, figure that time, what's the school year? What does that come out to
What we give
A
them now,
week, what's that come out to a week per the school year that they work?
Well, let's make it easy on me. $376 and teachers are employed for 10 months, basically. So it would be an extra $38 a month. Does that help? What
So
they
we're not
asked
giving them
for
nothing.
was on average, $750, which would be $75 a month.
Well, why
So
didn't we stay
the
with same?
proposal that Jason has made is roughly half of what the request was.
Well, I thought we
But
was
I'm only
going,
giving you rough numbers, so.
I thought we was going with the 1.5,
Larry, right now we pay them,
which was $700 and something dollars a year, right?
On average, $750 is what they've
Right.
said.
Which still comes out to, what, $70 a month?
But remember, that can be in addition to what the
I
state
know
will
it's in
give them.
addition to what the state's gonna do. I'm talking
Yeah.
about what we gonna do.
Right.
I don't care what the state does.
our total budget for Cabarrus County School Systems is, in
I know what
operations,
the-
$50 million.
I know what that budget is.
So they're essentially asking for a 7% increase by this motion, and they haven't even asked us for that in a budget meeting. They've asked us for a 7% increase in the middle of the school year, just for the point of asking for a 7% increase to the overall total budget of what we fund the schools.
Well, I withdraw my second of that motion.
Okay, we have on the table a motion. I would like to remind the four of you that I am not allowed to vote on this because you have recused me. It will take three of you to make anything happen. Okay, it's still a majority three of the four. So I'm just trying to restate and make sure that we, okay.
And whatever the state, if you go back to what, the governor said one thing, the legislature said something else, they're not gonna give anything. So the state probably won't do anything. They might cut the teachers, I don't know whether to give them money or not.
We have a motion on the floor from Jason that has two parts for Cabarrus County Schools. Certified teachers, 15% increase, certified teachers making under 70,000, 15% increase on their supplement, prorated for this year, total amount for next year. Classifieds up to 70,000 would get a 0.75% increase starting with their February paycheck. That's the motion, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so,
Is that half
yes,
for the rest of this year? You
No.
gonna give 1.5, all 1.5 next year?
no, he would be still
You're
giving,
gonna give them half?
yes. This year it would be 40% of the half. I don't want to confuse you any more than I have already, probably. We do have a motion on the floor, so Larry has withdrawn his second. So I will again ask, is there a second to Commissioner Osterreich's motion?
I will second that, and just, let me say, while I second that, this is a reoccurring cost, and we do really, we want to put all the money in the classrooms that we can, and that going to the teachers, all the support staff that's involved. We truly want to give an increase. Now, I understand that your request is much more. However, as I've said before, we've got three things on our agenda, and they're all large funding requests. So, if we were to grant all three funding requests at the full amount, we're going to have to figure out how that works into our budget. And that's what we're working on, seeing that this isn't a budget, session, that this is a mid-year request. I feel that it's appropriate that we do give something now. And unfortunately, we can't afford the full amount if we're discussing building new schools, and some of those other repair items that we have. So, looking at the overall picture in our full budget and all the requests that are coming from the Cabarrus County School System, the Kannapolis City School System, Rowan Community College, and all the departments that we have, it's very difficult to say that we can't fund your full request, but we're willing to do what we can, what will fit in our budget. So, that's the reason I second that. This is a mid-year increase for the teachers in the Cabarrus County school system employees. As I guess we'll discuss Kannapolis City School Systems next, or in the future.
I would just ask
but-
that if something
Yeah.
passes for Cabarrus, that we do it in two motions.
Right,
And that
I
we're
understand.
respectful of the fact that they pay differently.
Right,
That's the
and
only reason I asked.
Right,
so.
and I agree, and I think that's only appropriate.
Okay,
What
there
would it
is-
cost, what would it cost to do 1%?
probably $2 million.
Yes, somewhere around 2 million would be.
And you're already up to 1.1
Well, here's what I would like
and
to
a
say.
half.
Our total budget for both schools' operating systems is $52 million. So as they've presented this to us now, they would like a 6.5% increase to that, just right off the top for salaries, right in the middle of the year. Not at budget time, not anywhere else, right now in the middle of the year. We are going to have an increase for them, I suspect, based on ADM and things like that, and they're already at 6.5% above what their budget is for this year. If we accept my motion, it is still a 3% increase in their total budget, which I think is fair for the middle of the year, a 3% increase. It says to the teachers, we prioritize you, we want to do something for you, and we're going to take your $52 million budget and we're going to increase it by 3% to show you that. And I think that's fair.
Okay, but to be
Well, I
fair, your motion is, if for an annualized amount is 1.5 million, you're doing 40% this year. So this year's budget would be 600,000
Right.
in the current budget.
But it's going to go through for next year. I mean,
I
it's a
understand
recurring
that. It
expense,
would-
so that's how it looks. Middle of the year, we basically changed our budget for next year.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I just want to make sure that everybody understands the amount that you're talking about for this year. Because I want to make sure Larry understands
Yes.
what your
It's going to be 1.2 next year.
proposal is. Next year it'd be about 1.5 for the two systems.
Yeah, because you're going 40%.
Right, so 40% for this year would be about 600,000 for the two school systems.
And this was my point when we brought this up. This was a much more appropriate request for them to show us in their entire budget so we can see what they're going to ask us for in terms of maintenance, in terms of capital obligation, in terms of roofs. I mean, we're getting ready to hear about how they have $180 million in needs, and this one, all of this should have been put together in terms of the budget, which we are starting right now, and it would have been the perfect time to do that. And instead, they would like to get this one done. And I think it's because they're going to get this one done, and then they're going to come back and ask us for a lot more. And I wish that they would just put it all together so that we could look at it and say, this is the amount of money that we have, and this is how we're going to allocate it. Now, I would like to do something for our teachers. I think our teachers have been underpaid for a long time. And I think that tripling the biggest raise they've ever had in their supplement is sending them the message, the commissioners are here for you. We are looking at ways to do more for you. And then when the budget comes along, we can look at it again. But this is a mid-year request. Let's remember that.
Okay, there is a motion and there is a second on the floor. Okay? Any other comments to be made for this motion?
Madam Chairman, just a couple comments. I think this is mid-year. That's the reason in the motion that I made that included that began with our next budget, which would allow us time to incorporate that in. I'm not sure, if I were talking to a teacher and I'd say, well, I wanted you to get something right now, but it's going to be half of what the school board has recommended from going forward, I think they understand that means they're getting less money. We talked about the supplements and that we would be increasing the supplement by 15%. That still means that we're giving about half of what the school board has requested, and if that's our choice. The supplements, in my opinion, as I said, for teacher retention and for recruiting, to make sure that we attract good folks to teach our children in the schools, which is certainly the most important thing. I would think that one of our primary competitors would be Charlotte-Mecklenburg County Schools. The amount of our average supplement in 2013, and some of you school folks correct me if I'm wrong, but I've got $2,626 was our average supplement. The average supplement in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools is $6,376. Those are the people we're competing with. If you look down at some of the other counties, Asheville City Schools is $3,650. So they are $1,000 more per year than we are. So these are public figures that anybody can access. We are not paying an excessive amount in supplements, and if we add 15% to that, we're still not going to be paying an excessive amount for supplements, and I'm not sure what positive effect that's going to have on our competition with surrounding school systems in the private sector. You know, we've all read articles in the paper recently about teachers leaving the profession because they can make more money either in the private sector or in competing school districts. So if we're going to do something for the teachers, then it needs to be enough that makes it more attractive for them to stay here, which means at the same time we're doing something for our children. So I will be voting against this motion for that reason. And just to add to that, we're also, all of our other employees, maintenance employees, and those that do not receive a supplement, then we're cutting that in half, the raise that has been requested. And you know, like Commissioner Burridge said, it is kind of confusing. You know, we thought, well, we just want to make sure we know what the amount is. Thank you.
Okay, there is a,
I would like to point out, if you go back and watch, this is the agenda from the December 2nd work session meeting. Go back and watch it, because what that happened, I'll read it to you right here. Cabarrus County School System, it says the recommended action, request funding for 1% salary increase for certified staff from Cabarrus County. Funding request was $1.5 million. That was their actual original request, was 1.1%. And they sat in the meeting and they said, well, we would like to ask for more from the commissioners because that way if they negotiate with us, then we'll get the appropriate amount. So the reason that they asked us for 1.5% was because they expected some negotiation on this. And that's all that we've done. We've come back and given them about what they were originally going to ask for. Go back and watch the meeting. You'll see it. It's plain as day.
okay, we have a motion.
Is that true? Was that y'all's plan? Come back and get half?
Thank you for
I don't
asking
care what's
us
right there.
that, Larry. Jeff, would you like to comment on that? You were the one that
Not speak for the other board members, but I voted for the 1.5%, because one of my other board members pointed out that the county gave all the other county employees a 1.5% raise this past year under our school district employees, such as our cafeteria workers, bus drivers, custodians, and zero. So that's why. It wasn't a negotiation, it was a request for fairness.
Well, now, I'll go along with the 1%, but I'm not going for no less.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Jason, I'm sorry, I don't know how
Aye.
you voted.
I will vote aye.
Okay, so the motion is 2-2. That means it fails. Okay, that motion fails. Would you be willing to separate out classified and certified and allow me to make a motion on classified?
No.
Okay,
I would be in favor of that, Madam Chairman.
I will second Commissioner Burridge's motion.
I was just asking, I'm sorry, if
Yep.
they were trying to make sure. I was not making a motion for me to not be recused. I was just asking if that would be the case. It's not the case. Is there anything else
motion
to
did I
this?
If Commissioner Burridge makes a motion at 1%, which was their original proposal in their agenda, I would support Commissioner Burridge's motion at 1%, which was their original proposal.
Well, I'll make a motion for 1%.
Okay, 1% of, please give me your details so that I can make sure that I get it right.
Instead of the 7.5, 1% of the 1.5.
Okay, instead of 1.5%, you're saying a 1%
Right,
increase on the salary,
yeah.
so that if
For the
they
hourly
are,
for the hourly workers, and then 1% on the supplement for the teachers.
okay, 1% for each, which is what, instead of 1.5% that they have here, you're
Yes.
saying 1%.
Right.
Okay,
That's not, it's not 1% on the supplement. it's
Right.
no,
1%
it's,
on
you're
the
saying
salary.
1% on the salary,
it'd be
paid in the
10%. It would be
supplement.
10% of the supplement, I guess.
No,
Well, if you had 15% and you take 5 off of it, what you got left?
No, it'd be 20% of
that's
the
even,
supplement.
yeah,
It's
you'd
added,
have to go
yeah.
the other way.
It's-
Wait,
Okay.
So I think Commissioner Burridge is talking about 1% salary increase across the board for employees making up to $70,000, right?
Right.
If they're paid a supplement, it would be paid in their supplement. If they're paid on a
Yes.
on a hourly rate,
It would be a
would be
increase in their hourly
increase in
rate.
their hourly rate, okay, which is what they asked for. You're just saying instead of 1.5%, 1%.
Right.
Okay. That would be for, if you make that motion, it can be for both Cabarrus County Schools and Kannapolis City Schools, because
Correct.
for Kannapolis City Schools, everybody gets a supplement. It would turn out the same way,
Yes.
okay? Okay, so that's, make sure that everybody understands. Okay, Larry has made a motion. I'm calling for a second. Is that immediate? Is it prorated? Is it next
As
budget?
of next week, as far as I'm concerned.
Is it for the whole school year? So it covers this whole school year?
The rest of it, no, it covers.
Or you start from
covers
here forward?
From here forward.
Okay, so it would be the 40% left in the year for those getting supplements, and for the hourly, it would be just an increase in their hourly rate.
Effective February 1st.
Effective February 1st, is that what you said?
That'd be fine with me.
Up to 70,000.
Up
Up to 70,000.
Up to 70,000, employees 70,000 or less.
Now,
Right.
I missed the amounts. It's 1%
1%.
for the people that do not receive a supplement.
Right.
And for those who do receive a supplement, it is 20%?
No, it's 1%, it's still 1% of the salary.
1% of the salary. Gotcha.
That's what you said, is
Okay.
1%, which is what, that's asked. 1% of the salary for everybody,
Correct.
starting February 1st. No, it'd be just 1% of the total salary amount, the salary amount. You don't, all they're worried about is how they're paying them on supplement versus hourly. You would just give a 1% raise for everybody.
Right, you okay?
Right? Kannapolis would do just a 1% raise for everybody. No, it's
No.
not on their supplement. You would get a 1% raise. For Cabarrus County Schools, it's a 1% raise, okay? The difference is you're going to pay it in two different ways, in essence. Those that get supplements, they're going to get it in their supplement check, prorated. Those that are hourly, they'll get the 1% raise effective February 1st.
Now, that Kannapolis is not fair, if anybody makes under 70,000.
Yes, you're under 70,000 is still the threshold that you made in your motion.
Correct.
Kelly, it's the same thing you requested, it's just 1%, not 1.5%, okay? Prorated for this year,
You're also limited to 70,000 and below.
and under 70,000.
Okay.
Yes, I think she can figure that that calculation is an easier calculation, I think. Okay. Do you guys understand the motion?
I will second Larry's motion, and as
Okay.
part of that second, I will say that this would be almost a 25% increase for the supplement that we pay the teachers. I think that is a strong commitment to the teachers, and we are happy to support the teachers, and I'm glad to do it.
Well, personally, I think they deserve it.
Okay, there is a motion and there is a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with myself recused.
Let me
Okay? Yes, sir.
follow up after that. I'm glad that we have all that settled, and I know there's a lot of confusion and, some trying to figure out what to do. And as I go back and I say, if we had all the information from the beginning, we wouldn't be in this position. So,
Since your
Yes.
discussion is over, may I respond to that?
yes, please.
Well, I was in a meeting, I was with Kelly Klutz yesterday, late in the afternoon, and her phone rang, I don't know, 2 or 3 times requesting information. We passed this in December. So between December and yesterday, and then all of a sudden, a barrage of phone calls.
Yeah.
And
Let me respond to that. I
hold
started,
on just, I'm
my
not,
request came in
Well-
December. My request came in December, well before the holidays, and we haven't,
if
you know.
there's information that we haven't provided that was requested in December, that's on us.
It
I
is.
find that hard to believe, and I don't think there's anything on our side that we know of.
I've got the emails. I started in December requesting information for this to be separated out. I requested information in the past few days, and in regards to this again. Also, I requested capacity information that apparently the capacity information or the enrollment numbers that we received at the last meeting were, not current. So I've asked for that, and I haven't received any of that. And so it's very difficult for us to come in and make decisions and try to make educated decisions, wise decisions, without the information.
But
Okay,
again,
may I ask, may
sure.
I jump in,
Yeah.
please? If commissioners have need for information, please make sure it goes through the county manager's office so that they can make sure to follow up and make sure that we all get it. Same
I
thing,
think
if
Dr.
school board
Shepherd-
members
I think Dr. Shepherd would like to
need
respond to that, since
information
that's
from
his
the county,
office.
if you would go through the superintendent's office to ask us, and then that way the staff members can connect with each other. I think that the superintendent and the county manager have a very good relationship, and I know that the two finance people have a very good relationship. And I know that I get a lot of emails, you get a lot of emails, y'all get an insane amount of emails. I'm not giving any excuses for anybody, but there's so much going on that if we can go through our county manager and our superintendent's office, then they can make sure that they follow up for us. And that way, all of us, 5 of us, 7 of you, have the same information. Yes, sir.
I just want to say, I think that the issue that we uncovered in the midst of this was that we could not quickly provide you what you needed because we do salaries only for classified employees and salaries and supplements. So it's not as easy to calculate that information as quickly as you found out another district who's doing it across the board.
Right.
If you had a request in December that I don't know about, and
Right.
we want to provide information
Right.
openly and freely, but that's where the complication
Right.
came.
And I appreciate that, and I understand that, sometimes requests aren't always easy, but if that were communicated back that, hey, this is difficult to calculate, this isn't simple, I would appreciate that before we get into a meeting and not know that. So, thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, the next item that we have is the resolution from Cabarrus County Schools to fund a new elementary school in the northwest part of the county, commonly known as the New Northwest Elementary School. Do you know what page that's on? I know I'm getting close to it. Here we go. The request, as has been presented to us, was a school site for a new 1,000-seat elementary school in northwest Cabarrus County. And your request, I wrote it down, 18 million, there was an odd number. No, that says 20 still. Okay, next page, Megan. Okay, scroll down. Thank you. $18,045,538. That is the request before us today, Commissioners. Would someone like to begin discussion again? We've talked about this a lot.
I will
Or would
start
somebody
today.
like to make a motion?
Madam Chairman, I will start and I will make a motion. I would like to, we have had a lot of discussion with you, and it's been tough discussion. It's been good discussion. I would like to get started on some schools. We have been delaying for a long time, and I don't want this discussion to delay us further. I would like for you to get, as I've said all along, my number one priority is to build schools in this county, and I want to get started on that. I don't want a disagreement about $2 million to keep us from doing that. I had asked previously for a list of upgrades to school that were things that we put into schools that were in addition to DPI minimum standards, and Chairman Kiger said he did not want to give me that list, but I don't want that to keep us from building a school. So I'm going to make 2 proposals today. I'm going to make this in the form of a motion. Well, let me say also that we desperately do need a new elementary school, but we also desperately need a new middle school out at Mount Pleasant. We've been out there, we've talked about it. It is a top priority for me. Another top priority is Royal Oaks, and I'm trying to think about how to put all of these things together so that we can do all of them. I think Royal Oaks has some usable buildings there that are 20 years old as we went out there. So it would be difficult to do a remodel or a new school at Royal Oaks with those children there. So if we can come and do the new school, that will provide 1,000 students of capacity. You don't need 1,000 students of capacity right now, so that will give students from Royal Oaks a place to go. So we can start with the new school, maybe because there are three areas away, disperse the Royal Oaks students, build Royal Oaks, and then come back and we'll have 2 usable schools. So my proposal today is the most expensive elementary school that we have ever built in Cabarrus County, inflation adjusted, is $17.4 million. That is Patriots Elementary School. You have $1.5 million already. That's land, that's tax title out the door, as Chairman Kiger likes to say. You have $1.5 million. I will make a motion that we provide $16 million additional to that, and you get started on it. Now, this is a way I think that we can find compromise. I would like to have those numbers before we made this motion, and you didn't want to give them to me, which I understand. So your budget is $17.5 million. That would make it $100,000 more than the most expensive elementary school you've ever built in this county. If, after bidding it out, you come back to us and say $17.5 million is just simply not enough, then we'll look at it. And if we need to add some more to it, we can always add more to it. But there's not, in my opinion, I hate it when you see governmental officials that they both agree on at least a minimum standard, and that minimum standard doesn't get done because they can't agree on the end. So we both agree that you need at least $17.5 million to get this school done. So I will make that motion. I will make a second motion. As I went out to,
I'm
well,
sorry.
all
Which-
is part
which
of one
school?
motion.
Okay, which school is that motion for?
16 million
Northwest?
additional for the new elementary school.
The new Northwest Elementary School.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that, because you mentioned Royal Oaks, so I
Sure.
don't want you to get me too
No
confused.
problem.
Okay.
16 million for that. I went out, as we mentioned on Saturday, we went out, saw Principal Wilson out at Mount Pleasant. I had wonderful conversations with her. We talked about what her needs were. She said she had been principal at C.C. Griffin, I believe. Teacher at C.C. Griffin. And she said that that was an appropriate level of facility for what they are looking for in terms of a middle school. So if you look at, we had 3 middle schools that were built at that time: Concord Middle, C.C. Griffin, and Harris Road. They were all built using the same model. They were about 1,150 students averaged amongst them, and the average cost of those is $22.8 million. That was $22.8 million, including all of the land, including putting brand new electronics in there, and including putting all new desks and furniture in there. All new FFE on those schools, they were brand new. When I saw Principal Wilson last week, she said, "Jason, we just desperately need a school. We've got the electronics, you don't have to replace those." One of the PTO people out there said, "We'll even reuse the desks." So if you take that $22 million, and you divide that by 700 students, because they'd have 700 students instead of 1,150 students, you get to $13.704 million is what that would cost. My proposal is, I will make included in my other motion, to give them $15.5 million to build a new elementary school with cash. Now, that's the same deal.
Elementary or middle?
Pardon me?
Elementary or middle?
I'm sorry, middle school. $15.5 million to replace Mount Pleasant Middle School. We will give that to you with cash, and you can get started on it right now. Now, that's the same deal. If you come back to us and say, this will not work because we need something more than $15.5 million, you'll have the bids in hand, and we'll be able to look and see what the amenities are. And if you need more money, then we'll look at giving you more money then. But again, I don't want to hold up Mount Pleasant. It's been held up for 15 years. Let's get started on it. Let's get started on both of these. I mean, this is really, I've told you all along, I guess this is my opportunity to show it. Schools are my #1 priority. I've wanted to give you money to build schools for 6 months, and we've just been arguing about it. I just want to give it to you. So my motion is, I would like to give $16 million for a new elementary school, and $15.5 million to replace Mount Pleasant Middle School.
I will second
Okay.
that, provided we have the funds to do both of them.
The amount that we have available to transfer to capital reserve that's in your notebook,
Yes.
$29,486,500, Your motion is for $31.5 million.
And that does not
$2
include,
million more than what is currently available.
Ann Wilson has not officially designated a $5 million contingency fund. And I asked her about that at the retreat on Saturday, and she said we could take $2 million out of that. So I would like to take $2 million out of Ann Wilson's contingency fund. My plan had always had that at a $3 million contingency fund, which will give us $31.5 million to fund both of these schools right now.
And in the event, that there are any legal considerations that we should consider, I'm just, without giving any details, I think you need to consider that. Because you are pretty much wiping out everything that's there.
These funds are all supposed to go to our building account. That's our policy, and we've waived our policy for the last 6 years, but that's where these funds by policy are supposed to go.
I agree.
So let's use them for that.
I agree. I'm just saying that what your proposal will put us very much, just a little bit above the 15% that we are required to have. So if anything happens,
We're still
there
gonna have
is nowhere to go.
we still have a $3 million contingency fund included. And that is what is the proposal for next year, is to keep a $3 million contingency fund. And so we are going to keep that $3 million. So I am satisfied that with the $32 million we keep in reserve, plus an additional $3 million contingency fund, that we can go fund 2 schools.
Are there any other, you have a motion on the floor? You made that in form of a motion?
Yes, I did, ma'am.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I second it.
Okay. So, so there's a motion second. Other discussion that either of you would like to add? I will say I am concerned about going that low that quickly. I'm also concerned about the number for Mount Pleasant Middle School. That site would be building a school on the current ball fields and having to tear down the building in the front and make that land whole. And I don't know, based on the numbers that you have pulled and averaged, that those numbers are going to be realistic. And if we get too far into a project and we don't have a couple million more, if that's what it takes, that we're going to have a problem. What I would feel more comfortable with is funding the Northwest Elementary School and funding the architects and the engineers to do the design for Mount Pleasant Middle School, so that we have a better understanding of exactly how much money that is. And I would go so far as to say I would be willing to fund the architect and engineers to get started on the school that Kannapolis has requested, so that, again, we would have better numbers so that we are making informed decisions and not going out too far without, at this point in time. That's my comment, so.
What will happen if we don't give all of the money that they need? If we don't fund the school completely, then what's happened for the last 15 years will continue to happen, which is that money will be spent on something else. We'll go buy a new parkland, or we'll go build a new expensive building, or we'll go do something else with it. And if we take that money and we dedicate it to Mount Pleasant right now, then they will have that money, $15.5 million. And as I mentioned, so $22 million was with land, with furniture, with everything, and that averages out for students to $13.7 million. You'd expect that you could do demolition out there for the same price as land, right? So that means you could do demolition within the $13.7 million. But even if you couldn't, they have a $2 million pad. And if they come back to us and they need more, what is our surplus for the year was $3.5 million as predicted by Ann, is that correct?
Jason, I'm just giving you my opinion. My opinion is that you don't go all the way down, and that I would much rather have hard numbers, not average numbers and guesstimates on what a demolition is going to cost to go forward with. And I think that that is a prudent way of looking at it. I have said for 10 years Mount Pleasant Middle School needs to be replaced.
Well, let's
so
do
this
it.
is nothing new, but I don't want to go blindly in anything and get the county in a position, get the county in a bad position. I completely agree, but I'd like to have more information on Mount Pleasant Middle School.
And that's exactly the
my
problem.
point.
People have been saying for 10 years that they need a new one, but nobody will give them the money to do it.
No, sir.
So let's give them the money to do
I would say
it.
that the previous Board of Commissioners, you're right, they did not listen to the request when the request was made. For the last 5 years that I've been on this board, everybody has understood it has been a recession and the money was not there. I agree there's money there, but I sure would like to have something solid to deal with instead of numbers that you have calculated. I'm just saying, I feel much more comfortable with an architect with true numbers attached to it to go forward with. That's my point of view. I agree with getting forward with projects. I just don't think that your numbers are necessarily correct. So that's all. I'm just making my, I'm not arguing with you or debating with you. I'm just saying that I feel more comfortable not going all the way down. There are unknowns out there, and I'd like to have more information so that we know if 15.5 is the right amount, then we're ready to go with it. And that's my concern. So can I call on Chris to make any comments? Because they haven't had Chris hadn't had a chance and Steve hadn't had a chance.
You know, we've had this discussion, I believe, at the last meeting, so, you know, I'm not going to rehash, you know, what's already been said, but I do think Mount Pleasant Middle School, you know, should be a priority. You know, I want to see that project done. I think that they have been overlooked for a number of years, and I think it's very important that they receive the funds to get a new school. So, you know, I think that Mount Pleasant Middle School is a priority.
I tend to agree with Commissioner Poole. You know, I'm very uncomfortable about dipping into our contingency fund to that extent. You know, when I pick up the paper on Sunday morning and read that a lawsuit has been resurrected that we may incur some liability from. We don't know. You know, we hope not, but that could happen. You know, we cannot afford to not be prepared for those kind of unexpected situations. If I may, I would like to ask a couple questions. Chairman Kiger, we've had some previous conversations. You made a presentation to us this weekend. The number that's on the board is what you have indicated is the appropriate number, not including land. Well, we've got it broke down so you can read it both ways. You know, my request of you was, you know, bring us a number that you feel comfortable with that will do it. And so can you cut $1 million off that and still deliver the kind of school that you think we should be building?
Well, and it's cut $2 million.
Okay.
'Cause that's 19.5, and the total that's on the table is 17.5, so it's actually $2 million less.
Right.
And, you know, we can build a school for 17.5. I can't tell you what the finish level is going to be. I can't tell you whether it's 1,000 or 800 students, and I can't tell you what the materials are going to be and how long they're going to last. You know, but if we're driving to a number, well, then that's what we have to do. But again, there's certain things about that we can't guarantee. We can't guarantee we're going to be in it 60 years. So there's just certain design elements that we would not know. We've provided that number at that cost level with basically in mind of having to redo a standard elementary school such as Patriots or A.T. Allen. So on a specific site, knowing there are some site considerations and things that we need to do. So, you know, that's our comfort level for being able to deliver the school that we think we need to deliver with the technology in place that needs to be, the furnishings, the startup money is in that as well, which you wouldn't finance, you pay cash anyway. But things like the custodian supplies, I guess we used to always say pencil sharpeners, and we probably don't buy those anymore, but you know what I mean, just the startup type. But that's in that number as well. So, you know, to an arbitrary number, you know, it's just a number. And then we just go, and we may be back, we may not. But it may be an 800-student school, it may be a 700-student school. But we would just have to make that determination as we're going through the design process.
I would not be able to support the motion as it currently stands. I think it puts us at too much risk. We're throwing out figures for two schools that are significantly less than the estimates that have been presented to us. We're saying, well, if you need some more, come back and talk to us, but at the same time, we're using a portion of our contingency fund to fund the initial request. So if you come back for more, I'm not sure where it's going to come from. I feel like this is a partnership between the commissioners and the school board to do what's best for the citizens of Cabarrus County and for the children of Cabarrus County. I trust you to give us proper guidance as to how we do that. I think that Mount Pleasant Middle School needs to be replaced. I too have visited the facility, and yeah, it is not up to par with some of the other middle schools in our school system. I can't say how it would compare to surrounding communities, but I think we need to move as rapidly as possible to get that taken care of. The issue with the elementary school, we've had multiple people talk to us and make projections as to what we need to expect from a student population going forward. We need to be prepared for that. We can't wait till they get here to start thinking about it. So, the elementary school is certainly important as well. Commissioner Ostrike's idea about building the elementary school and using some of that capacity while the Royal Oaks is replaced, I think it might be a good solution. I'm sure you guys have thought about that and determined how you would handle that situation. But I think that we can accomplish these goals, that we can replace Mount Pleasant Middle School and build this new elementary school and begin replacement of Royal Oaks Elementary School in a more orderly fashion without putting the county at risk, and get the same end result and accomplish it just about as rapidly. There's also, I didn't ask the question about how do you feel about the figure that's been thrown out for the middle school, because if, based on Commissioner Poole's suggestion, then we would allocate money for design. We would have some hard, fast numbers on those schools. I've received some excellent communication from one of our citizens that's very, very interested in sustainability. I was very intrigued by the net zero schools that Mr. Whitkey mentioned over the weekend when we met. This gives us an opportunity to look at those options and say, if we spend this amount, this is what it's going to cost us per year from now on. If we spend a little bit more, we might save $1 million over a period of several years from energy costs and those. I think that those are the kind of long-term, big picture solutions that we need to be looking at. And I don't think this method gives us the opportunity to accomplish those things.
Well, and part of when our board goes into session for our joint discussion, some of that is on the agenda. So we wanted to bring that to you and talk about some of those things, and so we'll have that discussion. And just one small, not insignificant, but one side note to the middle school is we've got staging that we would have to do there, that it's not going to buy a new site and just build a new school. We've got students there that we're going to have to figure out what to do with while we're doing the school, and while we're staging the demo section, while we're doing that in different phases. So it's just another part of the challenge of what we want to do. But let me just make sure I'm perfectly clear on behalf of our board. We absolutely agree that Mount Pleasant needs to be replaced. No question about it, and we agree that Royal Oaks needs to be replaced. The financing part, as we talked about some on Saturday, that's a very difficult question that the five of you have to sort through, and I don't envy you in that. But as the Board of Education, we totally agree that those are three schools that are in critical need in our county.
Well, and I look forward to having those discussions about, if it's kind of like if I'm putting a new heating system in my home and the guy says, you got three choices. This one's $1,000, this one's $1,200, and this one's $1,500. And if I choose the $1,000 one that has a lower efficiency rating than the $1,500 one, then I'm going to end up paying far more than that over a period of a couple of years. So that's a very simplistic example of the kind of things that I think we need to be looking at. So sometimes, you know, that $1,500 on the front end pays back. It's that extra $300 or whatever it was pays itself back over a period of time very quickly. I kind of wish we had changed the order of these discussions on our agenda, because the next thing we're going to talk about is a proposed bond referendum where we get to go out to the taxpayers in Cabarrus County and say, do you want us to do this? Do you approve of spending this money on schools? And they get an opportunity to tell us whether they do or not. It is my understanding, you have passed a resolution requesting that. As I understand it, we're obliged to do it. So, you know, I think we need to keep that in mind also as we're talking about these projects.
Larry, do you have some comments?
Yeah, what was y'all's price on Mount Pleasant Middle School? Did y'all have one?
There have been some lists. In fact, with our joint meeting in May of 2012, when we identified the $187 million figure that floats around, there was a Mount Pleasant Middle School replacement line item on there that was a number that, in my personal opinion, far exceeds what it's going to cost. So, well, the one I saw is even higher than that. But so the number has floated around at 26 million's been out there. Again, in my personal opinion, I think that's too high. A previous county manager and a previous board to you guys worked with previous board members to me to produce a document to replace it that showed it at 27, 28 million, but it was for 1,200 students. Well, at that time, that was the thought process, yes. But our board has had discussions, and we don't think that that's viable. It doesn't need to be that big. A replacement school of 700 students is fine. If I had to throw a number out at you, I think we're probably in the $22 million range for that middle school. And hopefully that's high, but again, we've got asbestos abatement and demolition costs that, you know, that's an unknown until you actually get a consultant involved and figure out what you have. So we do want to honor, the town council has asked us to reuse the site, and our board's contention is that we would like to honor that, and I think that's the right thing to do. But it adds a little bit to the planning, and it adds a little bit to the site work, and it also adds a little bit to the construction timeline. And in our January business meeting, we did approve, here was the document from 2007 from an architect on specifically on that site. We've approved funding to have this architect update the document with current enrollment figures that we wanted to provide instead of the 1,000, the 700. What does that footprint look like? How do we accomplish that? And the administration will then have to provide us on top of that. What do we do with the students? How do we get the thing built? And what do we do with them while we're under construction? So we've already funded that part to do some due diligence work.
Well, we're not sitting here asking you to go out there and build that elementary school and cut it back to 700 or 800 or whatever. If this 17.5 won't build it, then we want you to come back and tell us what it's going to take to build it. And you're not going to know that till you bid it out. You can't go out there and tell the general contractor, we're going to have 1,000 students in this classroom, how much you going to charge us? He's going to go by the square footage and what kind of materials in it. I don't want you to go out there and put cheap material in it. I want you to build a schoolhouse that'll be there for 60 years. I want you to put a roof on and stay there longer than 12 years. You know, you got to put if you don't put good products in, you got to put cheap stuff in, you're going to replace it in 10 years. It makes no sense.
Yeah,
and I'd rather spend the money up front than have to come back and redo it in a few years. And we're not asking you, if you can't get by with 17.5, then come back and tell us what you need. We'll have to come up with it somehow. And now, I don't have a problem with going ahead and doing the site work, doing everything that needs to be done on Mount Pleasant Middle School, and just hold this money back for a certain amount of time till we get more cash money in here, and then go build Mount Pleasant. But yes, if something happens, we have to pay out, you know, some funds and we're not gonna have them, then we are cutting the county down pretty low on spending all this money. So I don't, like I say, I don't have a problem waiting 6 months to do, Mount Pleasant Middle School, or 8, or whatever.
The
Yeah,
county has
again, I'm sorry, you said 17 and a half, but I believe that your motion was 15 and a half for the middle school and 16 for the elementary, is that correct?
That's right.
I just want to make sure I had the numbers right. 'cause-
Well, it's counting at 1.5.
Okay, yeah, but that's already.
17 and a half, yeah.
Yeah, but that's already.
But it was
moved,
17 and a
right?
half million.
That one's already moved, that's why I didn't want to say it was another 17 and a half. I wanted to make sure we had the
But
the
I'm
right
not, I don't
amount,
want to
so.
sit here and say we want to go out there and build a cheap school. I don't want to do that.
Do you think that A.T. Allen is a cheap school? Do you think it's insufficient?
I don't think so, but we have not had to maintain it, but for just a couple years, so, you know.
Is Patriots insufficient?
I don't think so, but as I've told you in this board before, when the time between that project and this project, there are changes in code and code changes in ADA requirements and fire and life safety. So, no, I don't think either school is cheap or underbuilt. And that's why I think what we're doing here is based on what we've done previously. And just as a side note, part of our discussion coming in our joint meeting is our design guidelines and specifications. So, you know, that was something we did want to talk further with you all about. And so, you know.
Are A.T. Allen and Patriots Elementary built to the minimum DPI standards?
I don't know the answer to that question.
I mean, are there any amenities at either of those schools that are above those DPI standards? Several, right?
I don't know.
Several. So they're not minimum.
Well, you say several, but
right. I mean, Dr.
don't know if
Shepard's
you know
shaking
any
his
more
head
than
clearly.
we-
Yes, that there
I
are.
think the classrooms are larger than what DPI suggests, and as a result, we're able to have more, larger classes, and so, you know, yeah, I would say that.
But DPI also doesn't want you to have 1,000-student elementary
No,
schools.
they don't. They want you to build
So
much smaller.
the bang for the buck and the commissioners have asked us previously, they want us to build 1,000 students, and that's what we've done. But if we're going to talk about DPI standard, they also have a standard that we're not meeting.
My point is, we spent, in inflation adjusted now, so this is apples to apples today, $17.2 million on A.T. Allen and $17.4 million on Patriots. And those are well above DPI minimum standards. So I think that $17.5 million is an appropriate amount to start with. I don't think anybody's coming to you and asking you to build a low-quality school. I think if you could build A.T. Allen and Patriots Elementary, everybody in the county would be thrilled with you. That would be a great school. And so with the amount of money that I've talked about, giving you 17 and a half total dollars, you should be able to build those schools. I would like to point out that as of June 30th, 2013, the county had $95,739,000. If we spend the money that I've requested spending, we would still have $3 million in our contingency, we would still have $4.4 million left over for tax appeals, and we'd still have our 15% reserve, which means even spending all of the money that I am proposing today, we would still have $39 million as a county. That does not also include the $3.5 million that Ann Wilson said we would have in a surplus, which means we would end up with $42.5 million. So when I look through our previous year's capital improvement plan, this is the adopted capital improvement plan for this budget. And I look in here and I see school construction renovations, and I see 0 for Cabarrus County schools. And for Kannapolis City schools, I see school construction and renovation, and I see 0. And we have $95 million. Then I realize that maybe some people don't have the same priority to build schools that I do. And if we don't allocate the money now, while we have it, it will go away just like it always goes away. And so what we need to do is prioritize our schools, allocate the money to them so they can get started. Now, Mount Pleasant was my #1 priority. They have bathrooms there with no stalls. That is a priority to me. Go out and build that. The new elementary schools is the school board's priority, so let's do both. We can afford to do both, let's do both. And then that will put us on a plan to come back and do Royal Oaks And we're really getting moving on building some of these schools, because a capital improvement plan with $0 allocated to building schools is an insufficient plan, in my opinion.
Ms. Poole, may I make a comment? Were the two schools, A.T. Allen and Patriots, were they both part of COPS 2009? Okay. Just for everybody in the room, since I'm very intimate with the financing and the numbers, those were the lowest historical bids we have ever received because of what was going on in the economy. And the contractors out there were extremely hungry, and we got outrageously low bids, and we had contingencies that were extremely high for those projects in fear that those bids would really not be true to what they were, and they did turn out to what they were. So I did want to point out a fact that those were extremely low conditions for those two particular schools. Now, I'm not sure that I can say that about any other schools at that point in time, but that bond issue, we had a lot of money left over because of how good that market was. So I did want to point that out, that that market was totally unusual.
I went back and did an average of all of the schools that we have built in Cabarrus County for elementary schools, and excluding or including those, in the last 15 years, our elementary schools have cost us $15.5 million in inflation-adjusted dollars. So this gives them $2 million more than what the average elementary school built to 1,000 students has cost in the last 15 years. So this is a wonderful starting place. If they want to come back to us and prove that they need $1 million more, they're welcome to do that. But this is a way to hold them accountable and for them to get started, and I think it's a good compromise.
Madam Chair.
I just agree that.
May I speak as the former chair, of the Board of Education? May I have your permission to speak? A lot of things is being overlooked here, Commissioner Osterreich. You talk about the elementary school for the Royal Oaks area. When we built that school, and that school was opened in August of 2015, I don't know whether you know it or not, but we can fill the school 85% just from pulling kids from Odell, Cox Mill, and Bogart. And the Royal Oaks kids are still going to be in Royal Oaks. So, I don't believe you're going to be able to pull 300 kids in addition to the other three schools. Then we're going to be over capacity when the school first opens. I don't think anybody wants that. And then, as far as the middle school, who in the world would start a building project, even in your own situation, for a house that you're going to build for you and your family? You got 2 girls and 2 boys and you and your wife, and why would you want to build a 2-bedroom house? Because you don't have the funding. And not only that, it would scare me to death going into building a middle school for $17 million. And then you get into it, the big question is, where would the money come from? We just discussed the contingency of $5 million. You don't want to touch that. And what you're telling us is going to already be $2 million out of the contingency. And so you started what really would be a $22.5 million project for $17.5, and then why would you start the project not knowing where the money's going to come from? That's all I got to say about that. I think that there's need to be a lot more discussion between you guys on that part.
Well, you would go out and you would get your architecture, and then you would go bid the project out, right? You don't start the project without getting all your bids in. So what I'm saying is, go do your architecture, go get your bids, and then come back and see us. I'm not saying start the project. I'm saying we're going to take that money and allocate it to you so it's in a safe spot, so that we will not take it and spend it on parks or something else that is not a priority to the citizens of Cabarrus County. We're going to give you the money. We're going to allocate it to you. You go get your architecture done, get your bids in, and if it comes back that you can't build it for that price, don't start the building, come back and see us. And then we'll talk about it at that point. That way the money's safe. The people of Mount Pleasant can be guaranteed they're going to get a new school. And if we need to have a further discussion, we can. I had asked Chairman Kiger, show me the amenities that are above DPI standards so we can take a look at those and see if those are priority to us enough that we should spend our money on them. He didn't want to do that, and that's okay with me. I understand. So you take this budget, you go get your bids for the school that you want to build, and come back to us. If you need more money before you get started on the project, then tell us we need more money. These are the materials we would like to put in that we could not put in at this budget. these are the amenities that we would like to put into the school that we cannot put in at this budget. And if they're valuable amenities to us that are worthwhile to this community, we'll fund them. And if they're not, then you can go get started on the building with the amount of money that you have and build that school.
Okay, may I say that what you have just stated is not what your motion was. So what you have just stated is more what I said, which is to move forward with the elementary school in the northwest area, to provide funding for the architect and the engineers that they need to design Mount Pleasant Middle School so that they will have hard numbers. I'm great doing that. My concern is what your motion is that they get $15.5 million to do Mount Pleasant Middle School. Now, I would much rather go forward with the elementary, go forward with the architects and the engineers, and us have an agreement that, and we need to know how much the architect and the engineers would be for Mount Pleasant Middle School, a certain amount. Okay, do you have any idea what architect and engineer would be for Mount Pleasant Middle School? You would need 2 million, 3 million, Mr. Whitkey?
Mr. Whitkey would need to answer that.
Obviously, this is a question that you can't give a firm answer to,
No.
but you have some idea of what an architect's going to cost, and the
Yes,
engineers.
And I think the other part of it is due diligence, and it's not certainly like a brand-new site, but it is in many ways because there are a lot of parts of the property that we would be building on or looking to build on that we really don't know anything about. So we're going to have to be doing some engineering and things like that.
That's why I said architects and engineers.
Yes,
to
ma'am.
cover that.
So
How much do you think?
I would say $1.5 million.
Okay. So what I would be very comfortable voting for is the elementary school and $2 million for them to proceed towards bid for Mount Pleasant Middle School. And then just what you just said, when they get the bids or they get very close to a bid where they can get feedback on where this might land, they come back to us for us to appropriate the funds for that. And then we have time to get through this budget year to verify the amount of, Ann's suggestion that we're going to be over budget is just based on the knowledge she has right now, 7 months into a year, into a whole budget year. She could be high, she could be low. I would rather have a little bit more information on that. I have no desire to run out and spend $13 million on any other project. I'm perfectly fine for it to stay right there, for them to come back and be able to give us hard numbers. The only other thing that I would say is that fair's fair, and I think it would be appropriate for us to ask Kannapolis to get their building designed also. And that would be enter into the next discussion on completely paying for everything. So
Our policy.
that's where I am. I know our policy, we decided not to put it in there.
Let's talk about what our policy
Because it's a
is.
one-way street.
Our policy is all
So-
of our surplus above the $32 million reserve goes into capital funding projects, correct?
I understand that.
And when we put it in there,
chose
can we
not-
get it back out?
We cannot get it back out when it goes in
Okay.
there. So my point would be,
So is this
it's
in line
been
with our
perfectly
policy?
fine. We haven't just wasted money over these last few years. It stayed there so that it has grown, so that we're at this place where
What
we
do-
can do something with.
Did we build the field house at J.M. Robinson?
I'm not
Did
going to
we
debate
authorize
with
money?
you on everything that they've come forward that we've already approved. You're right on those because that's what you're trying to point out. I'm not disagreeing with you that those things have been done, Jason.
When
What
you
I'm
have-
saying is you are trying to spend $31.5 million, which we can't identify right now, 100%, and they can't guarantee that's what those buildings. You just said, go get a bid and come back and tell us how much you want. So I'm just saying, be prudent and not be reckless. Go forward with the elementary, go forward with the architects and the engineers, and then let them come back with the understanding that we intend to build Mount Pleasant Middle School.
When we have a big pot of money sitting there, we go and this commission has a very difficult time saying no to projects. And so when $280,000 comes in front of us for a synthetic turf project, even though we've got tens of millions of dollars in maintenance needs that they're going to talk to us about, we fund that. When field houses come before us, we fund those because the commission has a difficult time saying no to people when they come to us with a new project. So I want to take this money and put it in a safe spot, which is designate it for this school and put it there, just like our policy says. All I'm saying is let's do exactly what our policy says. And when we do that, Mount Pleasant will be guaranteed that they have the funds for a school, and we will not be tempted to go spend the money on synthetic turf fields at Frank List at a cost of $2.5 million, which was talked about for several months here and then magically went away. And synthetic turf
That
field.
money was going to be repaid through a different venue, which was not acceptable to you or Commissioner Meismer, so
Maybe it
therefore
was
it went
going to be
away.
repaid.
No, it was going to be repaid. Okay,
But
here
it
what
was
what I
gonna
would
be
tell
cash
you
up
is
front.
that we will tell them today, they're all in here right now, we are not funding anything else until you come back with the actual numbers on Mount Pleasant Middle School. How hard is that? Don't bring us anything else, because we're not even going to talk about it until we can address Mount Pleasant Middle School. Any discussions, I have emails already on somebody else wanting some money. Any other discussions are off the table. We want to get your numbers from Mount Pleasant Middle School. We want to make sure we have enough money to do it next. And once we verify that, we're hitting Mount Pleasant Middle School, and then we'll look at everything else. I have no problem with that. I just have a real problem spending money that is a bit nebulous. And that's where my problem is. You're doing averages, and I know that you've looked at all those. Averages are not a bid.
Well, let's take the $15 million and move it to our capital expense fund right now, and that way it will be
The
guaranteed
only
to be
problem
there.
would be, then you're hitting into the extraordinary circumstances amount. We know that there's lawsuits out there. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
How many years have
You
we
can
had that extraordinary
make that.
circumstances account?
If we go down to the 15%, it's going to be a problem.
I just have a
And I
question.
don't feel comfortable.
How many-
You have your motion. We're going to vote on your motion.
I'm not done with
going to
discussion.
agree
Wait a
with the
minute.
motion
How
that
many
you have
years
right
have
now
we had the
for those
extraordinary
purposes.
circumstances fund? How many years have we had that back?
We have always had money besides the 15%.
That's not an
because
answer.
you don't want, that's a line item that's been, you were the one that said,
We just
lump
created
everything
that this
together. That's
year.
what I'm saying, because you said lump it all together, don't have contingencies for every little area. Okay, we just got this.
We
I'm
just
just
created
saying,
this
I
this
think that
year,
this
and now we're
is-
saying that without it, we couldn't survive?
It's not what I'm telling you. I'm
It's only
saying that
6
your
months old.
motion is going further than what is available to transfer to capital reserve funds. And as a result, I do not feel comfortable with that. I've told you what I feel comfortable with. I feel comfortable going forward with the elementary school. I feel comfortable giving them $2 million for Mount Pleasant Middle School for architecture and engineering. And I feel comfortable that we will say to everyone in the room, we're not doing any other capital projects until they can bring us a hard number on Mount Pleasant Middle School, at which time we are committed to build that school, and we are committed to look at that amount and move forward.
We
And
have
if that
never-
amount comes in at $20 million, because I don't know where it's going to come in, then I think we're going to have to do some hard looking at it versus putting something away right now. That's where my problem is.
As a board, we have never voted on the extraordinary circumstances account, have we?
Sorry, you said it was just created, so I think your question would
Right.
would not be logical because it's not the same circumstances.
So that
trying to
$5
mix
million
things up.
is still technically in our monies available for appropriation account, right?
I am going to say again, no. We have issues that will address, that come to this board, and we need to be prepared. And if we spend too much and commit too much, then my concern is that we don't know what will happen and that there will be a problem. If
Pam.
you are willing to spend all the money down, that's your motion. But I'm just saying, you said to them what I just said. Go forward with your architects and engineers and get us a number.
Let's move that
Why
money
can't
over
we
to the
wait to
capital
get a
reserve
number?
so that it's put in a safe spot and that we don't spend
I
it.
would do it up to the
It's in a
29 and a
safe
half.
spot
I would
now.
not want to do more.
It's in the county's bank account. Let's just go with the motion that they do the elementary school. We let them do the plan work and everything for Mount Pleasant, give them the $2 million, leave the money where it's at. We don't spend it unless the county has an emergency.
That's not the motion that's on the table. That's
Well,
what I said that I am comfortable doing, is exactly what you just
The
said.
school's still gonna get built. We sitting here arguing over this stuff that happened 25 years ago. We ain't gonna, hindsight's 20/20, and I'm tired of hearing it.
I agree with what you just said. That's what I said. I'm perfectly fine going forward. That's not the motion on the table. The
They have
motion on the
been-
table that commits
And
all of
I'll almost
it, I
bet
can't
you,
vote
Mr.
for.
Wilk, that stall out there around that water closet, there used to be one around it, didn't there? I bet it's been put up 15 or 15 times in the last 10 years.
I'm not sure about that, but it's back in place now, sir.
Well, but to say, and I know how students are. They come off the ball field, they mad, they go in there, they gotta kick something, they gotta pull on something, they gotta tear something up, and they tear them stalls down. I see it all the time in restaurants. So, you know, how long was it down? I don't know. They had somewhere else to go, so what's the big deal about it? I mean, we're making a mountain out of a molehill, as far as I'm concerned.
I think there are things that change in time that require a different approach. We found a simple way to address the problem that I think will take care of things for now. It's not a permanent fix, but it certainly will stand the test of time for a while, so.
But all you had to do is look at the wall. There had been holes in the wall where it was fastened. There had been holes in the floor
Yes.
where it was fastened. And you know, you could almost tell how many times it had been replaced and put back up.
You are correct, yes, absolutely. So, but we have privacy back in those facilities.
I'm not sure that's correct. There's a big ADA issue on that toilet. The urinal is probably maybe 12 inches from the toilet, and then you have a wall. I don't think there's room for a stall there.
We have another facility that is ADA compliant.
Right, but Commissioner Burge is talking about that one specific toilet. I don't think you could fit a stall around it and get in because there's a bench that's right in front of it. I don't think there's ever been a stall on that. Is that right? Do you ever remember putting one there?
I haven't, but the people who've been here longer than I certainly do remember it, yes, sir.
And it's been several years since there's been one, correct?
That I don't know, but it's been a while.
Well, my
Okay, there
point-
is a motion on the table,
We're
and
talking about a what, a 25-year-old building? How old is it building?
That one was.
60?
In that range, yes, sir,
Well, I mean,
52.
things have changed a little bit over the last 60 years, too.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right now, we have
Okay.
$34,486,500 in our surplus. I would like to take $31.5 million and move that over to our schools so that they can get started building schools.
okay, we currently have a motion on the table, and that Jason made for $16 million for Northwest Elementary School and $15.5 million for Mount Pleasant Middle School. That is the motion that you made. Larry, did you second that? I'm
did,
sorry, it's been a
but-
while and I
but
can't remember.
Why not do what we said, is go ahead and give them the $2 million to see what it's gonna cost to build Mount Pleasant Middle School? We don't have any idea. If it costs $20 million to build one out here somewhere else, then can we build it for $15 million? I don't know till you get the bid in. But we've got the funds, and the funds can stay there. They can't be spent unless we vote to spend them. Can
That-
they?
So when you asked why, there's an election in May, right? And we may or may not be here. The people
I'm
that are
not caring about
let
the
me finish,
election in
please.
May.
The people that are committed to building a new middle school at Mount Pleasant may not be on this board next year. And there may be new people that want to go over to the west side or maybe do something else or maybe start building some more synthetic turf fields at Frank Lewis Park and think instead of building that school, we'd like to go do those things. So right now, the commissioners that sit on this board have the opportunity to stand up for Mount Pleasant and say, you will get this money, this will be your money, we are giving it to you and you get it. We have enough money otherwise. We've got $40 million sitting in our own account to take care of ourselves. We are going to make sure that you will never have to fight for a middle school again. And here's your chance to do that vote right now.
There is a motion on the table to fund $16 million for Northwest Elementary and $15.5 million for Mount Pleasant Middle School. Is there any other discussion?
I wanna know what the county manager thinks of it.
I too, I live in Mount Pleasant, my kids went to Mount Pleasant, it needs to be replaced. Am I comfortable moving that much money over right now? No, I'm not. I would prefer, if you're gonna move the money, and I don't mind moving it over for it to commit to, in fact, we were planning on moving it anyway, but we weren't planning to move that much. At the time, we were planning to move $29,486,000. However, with this additional lawsuit, would most likely recommend that we hold back a couple more $1 million. It moves over, and again, once you move it over, you can't move it back. But I don't recommend that you go into the additional $5 million.
So we can move the 29 million,
His recommendation is to move 27.5.
27 and a half.
How much we have a contingency fund for lawsuits, is that correct? There was mention of $2 million.
There's 29.5 available for transfer to capital reserve fund,
Right.
and he just recommended moving 27.5.
Right, but earlier in the discussion, there was a mention,
That would leave still 2 million that could be moved or could be used for something else, because once it's moved, that's where it goes, and it can't come
Right.
back out if something else happens.
but we
That's-
do still have the $5 million extraordinary contingency fund.
There is $5 million in there for extraordinary
Right.
purposes. However,
Which was just
however,
created.
if you move, as we planned in next year's budget, we haven't got there yet, but the plan is to take some of the contingencies out of those line items and therefore move it over to that fund. If we take that fund, then we're not able to do that, then they're going to stay in your general fund budget.
All right, I will say, I mean, hearing all the discussion, and as I said before, Mount Pleasant Middle School is a priority. I wish that was a priority over building the new elementary school, but seeing that you guys have a different priority than we do, and trying to come to an agreement about both boards agreeing to our priorities, I'll say, jointly. I understand that moving the 29 million into capital reserve. I understand exactly what Jason's saying as far as moving the money there, so that way it cannot be touched. Because I do agree, I've been on this board almost 4 years. Whenever we have money in the account, we get so many more requests. And, it's just inevitable. That's what happens. So, if we didn't have the money in that account and it was set to the side for Mount Pleasant Middle School, we're going to be less apt to go and spend the money. That's the realities of it. And that, I know that pertains to the county budget, and, the school board and school administration is knowledgeable on our, county finances. But, that's our job to figure that out. The $5 million extraordinary contingency fund, like I said, being here almost 4 years, we've never had that. So that has been created. And I'm not sure, if we will end up having to dip into that. I've never seen that situation happen, so I'm not sure why that was budgeted for that. I do understand that at any moment we can have a lawsuit, and we do have the pending lawsuits, but we do have our 15% reserve, which I know that we do not want to dip into because that's the county policy. However, the state only requires the 8%. So we do go over and beyond what the state requires, seeing that we are physically responsible. I think that it is important. I understand the fact of going out to get the bids before, we know what the school's going to cost. However, there does have to be a budget. So if we do transfer money to that, we could give you the 1.5 million or 2 million to go out and, get bids. But if they come in, well beyond, then here we sit, and the money hasn't been transferred over. If the money has been transferred to the capital reserve fund, any future board is going to be more likely to contribute to that to accomplish what, money is already there. Instead of just saying, well, we can't afford it, and then taking that 15, 16 million and spending on who knows what. If the total number, Jason, that you're proposing is 31.
He's proposing moving $31.5 million, and the county manager has said he's comfortable moving 27.5.
Right.
That's what the debate is.
Okay, right, and I understand that. Okay, but we have 29,486, 500 in the fund. That's the number that you had mentioned earlier, Chairman Poole. So that's $2 million more than what the county manager, proposes. However, we still have that $5 million.
Commissioner Osterreich is saying to move 31.5.
Right.
Which is
He
more
says
than
30
this amount.
Right. He
so that
says
5 million is already down to 3.
No, but you didn't listen to what I said. I said that Jason proposed 31.5. You said that there's 29,486, 500 in the fund, and we still have the $5 million extraordinary contingency fund. Now, if we take the 31.5, we're not going to have the $5 million. So I'm trying to get the numbers correct. All right, so if we transfer all of what's in the surplus of 29,486 and do not dip into the emergency contingency fund, then we're short Yeah, 2 million, which inevitably can still come out of this new fund that was created, just this year. So, I would be inclined that we could do that and inclined to moving the 20, not just the surplus. And then if we all agree not to spend the 5 million out of the extraordinary contingency fund unless something extraordinary happens, which is not new field houses or new turf fields, if we all agree on that, then we can use that. I know that's not the motion on the table, but.
I would be willing to amend my motion to be 16 million for,
Instead of amending, if you want to vote down the motion that's
withdraw.
there, or withdraw the motion and do a completely different one, I think that works better for Robert's Rules of Order.
okay.
So that's all, for
Was that a s-
procedural purposes.
Was my motion seconded?
Yes, Larry
I
seconded
withdraw
the
it.
motion.
I withdraw.
Then I will withdraw my motion and make a motion that we provide $16 million to the school board for the new elementary school and 13.5.
For Northwest Elementary.
Northwest Elementary. And 13.5 million to the school board for the replacement of Mount Pleasant School, with the idea that we will give them $2 million more when they come back with bids.
Are you saying?
Can I ask that,
Wait.
just to be specific, you're saying $2 million, but we don't know what that amount would be, so that once they got the bids, they would come back with the bids
Well,
for us to evaluate how much is, of the 13 and a half, you're planning to go ahead and give them 1.5 to start with the engineering, is that right? 1.5 or 2 or something?
we can give them, they can draw down on that fund for engineering and things like that.
Okay, so then
Um,
whatever is in there, that they would come back with the total dollar amount. Part of it would be sitting there for
Yes.
it, possibly enough.
Yes.
But if it's not enough, then at that point in time, this board would have to look at where the addition would, how much the addition is and where the addition would come from.
With the expectation that that budget will be about $15.5 million. And if it's more than that, then come back and tell us it's more than that and show us why it's more than that, and we'll look at it. But yes, exactly.
But not just come back and tell us, but come back with some hard numbers.
Hard numbers. And
Okay.
all the information that we need to be able to make an educated decision in terms of whether those are amenities that we want to fund.
Did you have something else you wanted to say?
Well, not in reference to the motion, just, Commissioner Reesmer, the 15% is not it's a recommendation from the state on 8% for an average county. We're not an average county. The board several years ago voted to go to 15%. It's for cash flow purposes. A county this size and the money that we move, we need that in order to make our payments, because we don't always get revenues when we need revenues. That was one thing. That's the other fund, while it's 5 million here that we've sort of designated there. There has been a fund there for several years now, simply because a couple of years, it's not 5 million, it was about $500,000 at the time, because we were moving, instead of budgeting some of our line items with a contingency from some of the areas that we didn't know was going to happen, so we moved it over. So for foster care, for human services, there were several programs that we budgeted less with the security over there. So
Right.
it wasn't 5 million, that was a bigger number.
Right,
but,
right, and that was my point is, I mean, you're talking about $4.5 million difference. I mean,
That's true.
That's
So-
a
So in the
big
future
difference.
budgets,
Right.
if you bring it back, then we're not going to be able to continue to take more of those line items and reduce them.
Potentially, yeah.
May I interject? To add to that, it's not a $4.5 million difference, it's really a $2.5 million difference, because prior to this $5 million being set aside, there was a $2 million set aside for health insurance, for self-insurance. And yes, we have dipped into that before within the past 5 or 6 years. So we took the $2 million for health insurance, we took the $500,000 for foster care, like Mr. Downs was mentioning, we rolled in another 2.5 and made the 5 million. So we only added 2.5 million to it because we've had discussions of eliminating these things as they come along and not rolling all that money over into the capital reserve fund for expenditures. And once you do that, you can't bring it back. So for The instance, had we done our resolution to transfer our excess 15% in December, which we're doing Monday night, we would have already transferred that money prior to this lawsuit that we found out about, and that is part of the reason why we added more to it to make it $5 million. Yes, it's $2.5 million more than it was before, but there are the what-if situations that occur, and because you have a policy of 15%, should you go below it, that affects our rating agencies. So that is the reasons why that number is $5 million. Just to let you know that $2 million of it was from health insurance, self-insured. $500,000 was from the foster care, so we added another $2.5 million to it to bring us up to that $5 million. So I did want you to know that there is some history behind it. Some of the line items have been consolidated and rolled down, so we didn't have so many. But we felt like that would be the better option to have that part of money set aside for the what-ifs, and truly are for the what-ifs, not for let's go build this, let's go build that, but natural disaster, flooding, whatever, truly for some instance like that occurs, and that's what our goal was.
Now,
Okay, so
what were you taking $2 million out of that for? You said 27.
possible loss,
Pending
litigation.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so,
Which we probably should, we might want to keep it.
Right, but that's where we have that $5 million extraordinary fund that can come out of.
but that's what she
But he's
just-
only wanting to, he's wanting to transfer.
He wants to move 27 and a half, not 29 and a half.
Right, it's
in
all
order
on
to
how you
do
move
that.
the numbers around.
And
But
as
I
of
don't
June
know.
30th, 2012, we had that $2 million set aside and let it go just a little too soon.
Technically, by policy, we would move $32,486,000 over, correct? Because that $5 million we haven't voted on, so it's technically available for transfer to capital reserve fund. You had $2 million before, and staff has created this $3 million account, but we haven't voted on it. And I remember at the fall retreat, Ann said we could change that to whatever we wanted to by vote. So technically, that's a staff number that we've been working with, but haven't moved that money. So we have $3 million, so we have $32,486,000 that would be moved there. My proposal is that we move $29,486,000, so we leave $3 million that would be moved by policy, but for us waiving our policy, and we will leave $3 million there and move over $29,486.
And when you accepted the audit in November, December of this year, that $5 million was inclusive as fund balance appropriated. So I don't know, by accepting the audit, the board acknowledges that that is in there or not. I do not know whether that is a approved statement or not. So I did want to point that out, that it was part of the audit, the $5 million.
Well, just, Commissioner Osterreich, if you're moving 29,486.5, the $5 million remains intact.
Absolutely, that's right.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
my goal, to leave the $5 million intact. I think that's an appropriate amount, so let's leave the $5 million intact, and that will be our contingency fund, and then we will go and move the rest over, and that way it's kept safe so that Mount Pleasant community knows that that money's there. They've had 15 years where they've been promised a school, and now the funds are there, and they're going to be guaranteed it, and so let's get going.
Just, Madam Chair, Ms. Dubois, is that on the agenda for February?
The agenda item was requested to be turned in to appropriate, to transfer the excess 15%, so it should be on the February
So
agenda.
we, as a staff, we were already planning to move that money. So that was our recommendation. I'm not sure if it ended up being the 29, was it
It
the?
should be the 29, because that was prior.
we found out
It was prior to
afterwards.
Saturday.
Well, I think that that's a good compromise. You're concerned about the $5 million, concerned to keep that there. A new elementary school, the hopes of a new middle school, you guys are able to move forward with that. The money's there for the school. Once you go out to get the bids, do realize that there is a budget there. So, I don't want to come back with a $30 million number, because then, there's no way we'll be able to do that. So that gives an idea of a budget, gives Mount Pleasant and the community the assurance that there are funds there protected that we cannot touch. Also, it'll keep our contingency for the remaining of this fiscal year, and then we can reevaluate at that point whether we need to use that leftover contingency or, whatever it may be, if we have some surplus to go towards additional funds to the Mount Pleasant Middle School. So I'll second that motion. Oh, no, he
I
withdrew
withdrew
his
mine.
motion.
He made another motion.
Yeah, so I second that motion.
Okay, and I just want to, your motion is, I guess it's two parts. One part is to move $29,486,000 into the capital reserve fund. And of that amount, $16 million would be available for Cabarrus County Schools to proceed with Northwest Elementary. Of the remaining amount, $13,486,000, they would be able to draw down for architects and engineering fees and due diligence that they need to do on the Mount Pleasant Middle School site to get it to the point where they could get hard numbers, which would then come back to us with the understanding being that the money in the capital reserve account would first go towards Mount Pleasant Middle School, but an evaluation will be made once we get,
No, she was talking to you.
okay, sorry. Once we get hard numbers from them to verify the actual cost of construction or the actual cost of the remaining cost of the project.
That is it precisely, Madam Chairman.
Okay. Just like to restate to make sure that with all the conversation that everybody knows where we're going, okay? And Chris, you seconded that motion, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Larry, anything else you want to say at this point?
How close to that is transferring those funds over? What's that leaving our
That would leave the $5 million.
$5 million?
Yes.
$5 million plus $4.4 million we have in a contingency for tax appeals, plus $32,019,000 in our reserve.
It would leave $5 million in the contingency. We have to have the 15%, and
Right, the 15%.
we have no
got to
idea
have
what's going to
for
happen with tax appeal, so that's sitting there, but
Bond rating. and
we
all
could
that kind
lose
of-
every bit of that, and, I mean, you can't bank on those. It's great to know, but it's great that it's there in the event of, but until we find out what happens with lawsuits and stuff, we can't guarantee any of those
Well,
numbers.
that's my concern, is
That's
if
our
something
cushion.
if something does happen, we don't know what's gonna happen next week as far as, what this county's really gonna need, cash flow. Once we move the money, we can't touch it no more, correct?
Once we move the money into capital reserve, it will stay in capital reserve. Yes, sir.
But remember, we're allowing that $5 million contingency.
I know what we're talking about, the $5 million. What if it comes back and we have to pay that amount that, the racetrack wants?
Well, technically, Larry, our policy is that we would move all of this surplus over every year.
I know what the policy
And so we're
is.
just doing it in compliance with the policy.
But
We don't keep these
hadn't-
large
We
contingencies.
hadn't been moving that money, though. We've been spending it.
We have been spending it, you're right, and that's what I want to stop. I want to get it moved over there so we don't
It
spend
could
it.
stay in that, we could hold that 13 million, except for the 2 million to give them to go ahead and get their, plans done with. We could hold that in our regular fund and say we're not gonna spend it except for an emergency, and not spend it down to nothing, is what I'm looking at.
We can agree to that, but if this doesn't get started quickly, the commitment that this board's making with that may not be here in December.
Well, I can't help what another board makes.
Right, this is way
I got
to
a feeling
ensure.
that this group's going to move pretty quickly.
This is,
I
well,
don't
and I
think
hope
they're gonna
so,
wait.
but you never know.
I mean,
But you
I-
hope so, but this is showing, making a promise from this board
It's
to
still
Mount
making the
Pleasant that
promise
funds
to
it.
them that we've got the money laying there.
It's not a sound promise.
I
It's,
don't know why it's not. It's just a sound one way or the other, as far as I'm concerned.
I
If
think
we say
Chris
we're
is-
not gonna spend the money, we sit here and guarantee we're not gonna spend the money, it stays in this account, whether it's in, regardless of which account it's in, we're still not gonna spend it, except the fact when they come back with their bids, and we can transfer the money then and give it to them at that time, what difference does it make?
10 months
Except
is what
for-
it makes a difference. The promise that you're asking for is a promise that is valid for 10 months.
Well-
And I don't want to make a promise to these people for 10 months. I want to make a promise to them. The Bible says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Well, I want to look them in the face and say, this is my yes. I will give you this money, we are committing to funding the school, and you're going to get your money.
Had a couple comments that I wanted to make. Yeah, I do not think that I can support this motion for the same reason that I didn't support the other motion. You know, we're talking of, you know, they've got numbers here saying $18 million for an elementary school. We're saying do it for $2 million less. You figure out where to cut $2 million out of that budget. I don't, you know, I could be more supportive of allocating the engineering and architectural fees for all three of those schools, Royal Oaks, Mount Pleasant Middle, and a new elementary, and bring back the numbers and see what we do then. Yeah, I want to read from an article. You know, we've talked about what we've spent on schools in the past. We've talked about minimum DPI standards. Over the weekend, we talked about a minimum basic education. I don't think a minimum basic education is what we want here in Cabarrus County. I don't think we want to look at minimum standards. You know, what can we get by with without going to jail for our children in the schools? Basically is what that says to me. There was an article in a Guilford County publication. It was dated January the 21st, 2010, so it's 4 years old. And I want to read one of the paragraphs from it. Cabarrus County, this is Guilford County talking about us. Cabarrus County Schools, slightly northeast of Charlotte, is one example. And they're I better read the sentence before to make sure we're clear. Other county school systems are realizing construction cost savings on a large scale, taking advantage of the recession to bring schools in far below their projected costs. That's what Pam mentioned to us earlier. Cabarrus County Schools, slightly northeast of Charlotte, is one example. In short order, it has built 2 high schools using efficient designs to produce schools far cheaper than Guilford County Schools has managed lately. In addition to Cox Mill High School, Cabarrus County Schools in 2007 opened Hickory Ridge High School, built for $29.6 million, $10 million less than Northern Guilford, which was built at the same time for $39.6 million. Both figures refer just to construction costs without site work. Hickory Ridge cost $30.7 million and Northern Guilford $44 million. So we're talking about that we've spent too much, and we spent $10 million less than Guilford County, and so now they brought back another figure, and we're saying cut $2 million off of that. Yeah, Chairman Kiger, how do you respond? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree wholeheartedly with the premise of the article. I think Cabarrus County has done a masterful job of maintaining quality schools and well-built schools at a reasonable price for the taxpayer. I think that if given we have the charge to figure out the balance between what we're going to provide and how much it's going to cost. And in my professional life, there's this saying you use, and Larry probably is familiar with it, and it's code is minimum. You don't build to code because that's the minimum standard. You figure out
to keep you from going to jail.
That's exactly right, and we know we do not want to go to jail. So, in my opinion, we've done our pro forma due diligence to set the current elementary school budget in a reasonable fashion for what we think is the proper school that we need to build. And that's the number that we've got. I sat here previously and told you that we all hope that we don't spend one dime of the contingency that we're showing in the budget. And because anything that we don't spend, we give back to you. We do not want to spend that money. If we get through the design phase and we are successful in driving the architect to produce the building that we want to produce, hopefully we'll realize some savings on the top. You can't see it on the screen now, but the very top line, well, because that's sticks and bricks. That's where we have to juggle cost of materials, energy efficiency, what are we willing to pay up front for the versus the return on investment over the long haul of the building. And that's what you do when you sit down with the architect up front. The other thing you do sit down with the civil engineer, and you strongly suggest that they figure out a way to put your school on your site with a minimum amount of site work. We don't want to pay to move dirt. That doesn't educate one kid in our county. But that has to be driven by us. We have to be a proactive participant in driving that construction process. I think Cabarrus County historically has done a good job of that. A previous chairman to me was a general contractor. I think that helped when we built Cox Mill High School. That's I'm a licensed general contractor as well. That's the fun part of what we do. Having these meetings is probably not the fun part of what we do. But when I get to sit with Mr. Whitkey and his staff and help try to drive what we're going to do and what the standard is and how we're going to do that from a construction standpoint, those are fun days for me. So that's what we want to be able to do. But to just arbitrarily call a number to it and say, well, we think you should be able to build to the average. We hope we build it as cheaply as we possibly can. It's just difficult for me with my background to go into a project when I already know, boy, we're going to be searching for $2 million to pull out of this thing. And that's a difficult spot to be. And with that note, the Mount Pleasant Middle School, I guess we'll take whatever we get and we'll work with it. But we've already been, Commissioner Meesner's already put us on notice. When he said, well, don't come back to us and tell us it's X, but I'm telling you up front with your 13.5, in my personal opinion, you're $8.5 million off. And Mr. Whitkey would tell me that I'm low. Based on staging, it's more expensive to build when you have to do it in stages. So he and I have a different opinion on what that's going to cost. But I just want to be clear up front that we are thrilled. However you move your money to do what you need to do to give the people of Mount Pleasant a new school, that's fantastic. They deserve a new school. We want to give them a new school. But the 13.5, how we get to the final, that's up to you guys. But I'm just telling you, I think the 13.5 is not enough money. The cost at the end of when we're done with it, in my opinion, is close to about 22.
Right. Well, I appreciate that input. I don't have any problem with transferring the money over. That's not a problem. The very thought that the 5 people that have been elected to serve on this board do not have enough self-control to make decisions on the spending of their money is ludicrous in my opinion. And I think the comment that was made earlier, we have an election coming up next year. And we've got 3 seats on this board that will be up for election. And I think that is what is driving a lot of our conversation and our decision. And it shouldn't be that way. Unfortunately, that's the way the world works. But we want to take care of the needs of all the children in Cabarrus County, the ones that are here now and the ones that are coming, as quickly and efficiently as we can, and to place these kind of restraints on our school board. We're going to cut $2 million out of your budget, what you think it's going to cost, but we want you to deliver a product that's of the same quality that you would have otherwise is unreasonable, in my opinion. And that's my thoughts on the matter.
I'll just, Commissioner Morris, if this is what was driving the election, then I would vote to give them $22 million. I'd vote to, give the full amounts of all the requests that were here today if this is what was driving the election.
Have you got it?
This is not. I don't. But what we'd do, we'd finance it, is what they've always done. So if this was driving the election, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I'd vote to do it all. But this is the stance I've always taken since I've been on the board, and And I hate to use this analogy, but going back to the car analogy that we used in the previous meeting, and just to kind of set up the dynamic of the relationship between the school board, the commission board, you know, if my parents were to give me, or say your child were to come to you and ask you for a car, and you give them a budget, they're going to try to use every penny in that budget to get what they, you know, want. I mean, that's only natural. I mean, anybody's going to be willing to do that. I don't blame you guys for coming to ask for the money. That's your job. That's what you guys have to do. But, you know, you give a budget, and then, well, you know, you find something over here that may be a little bit better but costs a little bit more, well, then we'll reevaluate at that time. There has to be some accountabilities, and it's not that, you know, we're, you know, trying to cut them out of the loop or anything of that nature. There just has to be some accountabilities, and there's no reason that, you know, they can't come back and we just have some fair and honest discussions.
Well, and I'd like to add too, this isn't just me sitting and looking at a piece of paper and deciding numbers. I went and visited almost 20 schools between Kannapolis City Schools and Cabarrus County Schools. And I'll tell you, as I started that, I've done that in 3 months because, you know, a lot of times people come in and they can complain and they can find problems, but very few times do people actually find answers and solutions. And I said I want to be a solutions-oriented person, not a problems-oriented person. So I probably spent 10 days out at our schools. And to be quite honest, Commissioner Morris, several teachers and several principals said, we've never had a visit from a commissioner before. You're the first person that's invested enough time to actually come out here and see it. And it was very important for me to come out and actually look at the construction standards and look at the programming that was going on and look at the education that was happening. And I found over and over again that these glamorous facilities, as I've mentioned before, are not necessary. And so as I've looked at these numbers, you look at schools like Concord Middle School and C.C. Griffin and Harris Road Harris Road Middle School. Have you been to any of those?
Yes, I have.
And do you think that they're insufficient in some way?
There certainly are at Harris Road Middle School. Is that the one you said?
Oh, I've been to 3 of them. Concord Middle,
is that the one
Harris Road.
Harris Road Middle School, at the time that I last visited there, had some very serious capacity issues. I think some of those have been somewhat addressed since that time. As far as the actual physical facility, I saw no problems there.
I agree with you.
A little earlier generation than some of the others that you have mentioned.
So I agree with you. There are no issues at all with respect to those facilities. So let's look at what it costs to build those facilities, and let's use those types of facilities to come up with budgets instead of Winkler, because I think you would acknowledge that Winkler is a much different school than Harris Road Middle School, right?
Winkler is much different than Harris Road. Concord Middle School is much different from Kannapolis Intermediate School. A.L. Brown High School is much different from Concord High School.
Right.
I could continue on with every school in the system. They're all very different.
They're not all very different. A lot of them were based on the same model. And so Harris Road, C.C. Griffin, and Concord Middle are all the same exact school. They use the same print, and they just went with it. So let's build to that standard.
Commissioner Ostruck, I'd hate to interrupt you, but Concord Middle is not the same design as Harris Road.
C.C.
and
Griffin
C.C.
and
Griffin.
Harris Road.
Those two are
Sure.
the same.
I haven't had a chance to go out to Concord Middle, but I have been to the other two. So let's use, and the cost of those two is $22 million. The cost of Winkler is $29 million. So that's $7 million. Well, $7 million, you put that, you also talked about Cox Mill versus Hickory Ridge High School. Cox Mill costs $6 million more than Hickory Ridge High School, and I can't imagine that you would say that Hickory Ridge is not a sufficient high school, right?
I've found it to be very sufficient. I'm not absolutely certain of the exact comparisons square footage-wise between the two, if they're identical.
Yeah. I mean, I
And
could
any
get you the numbers.
difference in the construction cost, I would think.
But both have the same capacity, and they are sufficient schools. So my point is, if you look at Cox Mill versus Hickory Ridge, that's $6 million. If you look at Winkler versus C.C. Griffin, that's $7 million. And if you look at Hickory Ridge Middle School, which also costs $28 million, versus C.C. Griffin, you're talking about another $7 million there. So that's $20 million difference between this building standards of the 3 new schools versus just one generation before that. So if we had built as we did the one generation before, we would have $20 million more right now to build on a school. Now, you look at what a new school costs, they're asking us for $20 million. So if we had built to that standard, we would have one new school in addition to all the other schools that we have. And that's all that I've ever been talking about for the last few months, is I agree with you. I do not want to build to a substandard level, but you agreed that Hickory Ridge High School was not substandard, and that C.C. Griffin and Harris Road Middle Schools were not substandard. So let's build to those levels, save the money, and we'll go build a lot more schools so that we can address we do have a lot of capacity issues coming. You had talked about that. If we can build to that standard, we will be able to go build the schools that we need to address our capacity issues. And that's all that I've ever asked, and I think you and I agree on a lot with respect to these facilities.
And my suggestion would be that if you do not trust the Board of Education to go forward and do these investigations and make these decisions, then I would say that we should allocate money for engineering and architectural studies for several of these projects, all three of them, as I mentioned before. The replacement middle school for Mount Pleasant, the new elementary school, Royal Oak School, and then let them bring those figures back to us, and then we figure out how we fund those. We will not, as was pointed out, be able to fund even two of them from the funds that we currently have on hand. So we've got to figure out how to cover the rest of that.
At $16 million and $15.5 million, we could cover both of them right now. We have $34 million right now in reserve. Now, we're talking about moving them over and waiting, but right now, technically, we could fund both of them and still have $3 million in our contingency fund.
Assuming that your figures are more valid than the figures that have been brought to us by the Board of Education.
But I would also say, we did this exercise on Friday night, where we put dots up under the programs that we wanted to keep and the programs that we wanted to get rid of. And the three commissioners, Commissioner Meismer, myself, and Commissioner Burge, actually went through those programs and looked at some of them and said, this is unnecessary spending, let's talk about some of them. And I would say that you went through and put a dot on every single program. And so if we get more commissioners like you on this board, then you will continue those trends of spending, and this money will be gone. We go back to, if we don't move this money over, it's a 10-month promise, and if you get more people on here that want more synthetic turf fields, then that money will be gone, and Mount Pleasant won't have a middle school, and that would be terribly devastating to them.
Okay, I will.
Well, this money cannot be spent without a vote of three commissioners, correct?
That is correct.
So I don't see where the problem
The
is.
motion on the table is to move $29,486,000 into the capital reserve fund. $16 million would be used for the Northwest Elementary. Somewhere between $1.5 and $2 million they would use for architecture and engineering for Mount Pleasant Middle School, which would leave a balance in that account, which would be used towards the construction of Mount Pleasant Middle School. That is what the motion is, and that's what the second is. Okay. So my last statement is, I think that will be a down payment on the cost of Mount Pleasant Middle School, and I hope that you can do Northwest Elementary School for the $16 million. And it's for that reason that I would vote for this. I do believe that they will come back and need additional funding than what's there right now. So, but that's the motion on the table. We've been going at it for 2.5 hours on 2 items. We've still got one more to go, and we still haven't gotten in joint session with the school board. So I need to find Commissioner Burridge.
I'll go grab him.
He needs to come for the vote, or we're going to wait a minute till he gets here. I want to make sure we have everybody on record for the vote. If he leaves and is not recognized by the chair, then his vote is in the affirmative. That's what Robert's Rules of Order says. Huh? I think he went to the restroom, and I'm hoping that he went to get him from the restroom. I would. It is perfectly legal for 2 to talk. I hope that they're not out there talking. If one of you guys would like to go to the restroom to hurry them back in here, that would fine. No, not you. Steve, you. You're not allowed.
Now you have 3.
Now we have 3. That's even worse. You can't leave. Sorry. There is another male person in the room, not Steve or Chris, who would like to go and tell them, thank you, dear, and he'll tell them to come on so we can vote. That would be great. This will be great. I'm sure somebody will note this timestamp on the meeting to make sure that we're talking about who's going to the restroom. Though we've had lots of potty conversations at this meeting this week, so, you know, we're right there in it.
A lot of potty talk.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Burridge. I thought that you had gone around the corner to get a drink. My apologies.
That's all right.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Do I need to restate it, or is everybody good with it?
Is it one for $29 million transfer?
The motion on the table is to move $29,486,000 into the capital reserve fund to instruct Cabarrus County Schools to begin, to use $16 million for Northwest Elementary School and to begin the architecture and engineering and due diligence for Mount Pleasant Middle School, come back with the hard number. Any funds in that, of this total amount, would be there for Mount Pleasant Middle School when they come back.
What do y'all think the time limit is on coming back with this? 6 months? 3 months?
No, we'll be here sooner than that.
2 months?
Mr. Whitkey, any
For the
idea?
elementary school?
On the middle school.
Both of them?
Well, the middle school will be longer than the elementary school.
6 to 8 months, I would think, to get to that. That's a
Make sure your
tremendously-
microphone's turned on, please. It may be.
It just requires a lot more work on the front end because there's a lot of questions about road closures, utilities, and a lot more investigation. Also in terms of how the building can be built while the other one is kept in place and operational. There are some issues of utilities running through the existing building that we might have to cut off and resupply in order to keep it operational. Those are all things that we have to look at on the front end before it ever goes to bid. So I would say a minimum of 6 and probably 7 or 8 months, but before we have a complete set of bid documents on that project.
Okay.
Yeah.
The elementary school, we were trying to break ground in July. So we will have bids summer, and we'll tell you whether we have enough or not.
Okay, so they will move quickly, expeditiously on both projects, okay? And we will know as soon as they can tell us something. The motion has that money will be there, $29,486,000 to go towards these 2 projects. That's what it, substantially, that's what it says. Okay? So there is a motion, and you seconded, correct? Jason made the motion, Chris seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1. Do you have everything that you need?
What was the architect and engineering money?
They said 1.5, they can draw down on it. We are expecting it to be between $1.5 and $2 million that they will need for the architect and engineering and the due diligence that they feel is necessary on the current Mount Pleasant Middle School site to get ready to have the plans ready for bid.
And 16 million for the?
60 million for the new Northwest Elementary School.
So
with
it's
the
1.5 to
understanding-
2, or is it 1.5 to 2 million, or is it 1.5 million for the?
It was 1.5 to 2 million. There was a range in there.
It's, when they come back and tell us how much it's going to cost for their architects and engineers, we'll transfer that to them.
Yes.
Okay, so when we transfer the excess fund balance, are we transferring the 29.4 million as of Monday night, if that's what the board decides to do, and then we will extract this money from the capital reserve fund for these projects?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Is that, anything else? Yes, sir.
Just to point out, the range is a problem, to be honest with you, because, we won't have a definitive number at any point. We will have a definitive number at some point for the architect who is designing the building. There's a lot of bits and pieces of drawdown that we'll have to do as part of the due diligence, so.
We do not want those numbers to go over $2 million.
Oh, absolutely, and they won't.
And we would prefer that it's closer to 1.5, because whatever funds are available will be used towards construction.
Absolutely, ma'am.
But I didn't want you to come, I personally don't want you to come in at 1.6, and we've limited you to 1.5.
That's fine.
That would be the point.
I
okay?
just wanted to let you know, kind
But
of.
if you come back and there's issues, you have to come back and tell us. Yes.
So we
But-
will amend the project ordinance that is currently for 18,045 to 16 million. We'll amend the budget revision that's attached. We need to do a second budget revision for up to 2 million for Mount Pleasant Middle School,
For architect, engineering, and due diligence.
which we'll need to add to that project ordinance, and we'll amend it also.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
You good on that? Okay. You're good on that? I'm not worried about Kelly and Pam working together on it, so. Okay.
One more
Item,
question.
yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Ostrike just pointed something out. Did you also make the motion to move the 29 million?
Yes.
You don't-
29,486,000 was his amount.
So you just went ahead and did the 15% policy?
Yes,
We
you don't have to.
bring it to the board now,
Yes,
as planned.
Thank you.
yes. The motion was to move the money, and that's what the money will be used for. Okay? Okay. Okay, now we're on item number 3. Sorry, one of these days we are going to meet in joint session with you guys. And I'm going to ask Steve Cordell to come up, please. The third request that we have was support of a bond referendum. And how do you want? You can use that. Yeah, or you can sit in my place, Steve. The camera fits right on this spot, so please join us. Okay, Steve is our bond counsel, for everybody that does not know Steve Cordell. We have asked him to get some information for the county commissioners concerning your request for a bond referendum, and felt like that was some information that you would be interested in also. So I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you explain to us the process and where we are in the process and steps of the process that we need to be aware of.
Sure.
Okay?
Good to be with all of you. My name is Steve Cordell. I'm with Nixon Pruitt in Charlotte, and it's been my privilege to serve as bond counsel to Cabarrus County since 1994, I believe. In any event, in North Carolina, the process involves multiple players. As y'all have discussed, it's up to the school boards to determine the funding needs, and they communicate those then to the Board of County Commissioners, and the Board of County Commissioners then do have their ability to determine, which of those that they believe are appropriate and to approve those, particularly with respect to bonds and general obligation bonds, which require a vote of the people. The process is the school boards do have the right to petition the county commissioners to hold a referendum to approve school bonds. You do not have the ability to dictate the amount that they are going to put before a referendum. That is involved in the county commissioners are very much involved in that decision. Ultimately, at the end of the day, though, in North Carolina, there's another player, the Local Government Commission, which is a regulatory body in Raleigh that's involved in the approval of all the debt. And so it's really going to be in collaboration between the school boards, the county commissioners, and the Local Government Commission in terms of how much of what the dollar amount of a school bond referendum is going to be. The county commissioners, if you petition them to hold a referendum, they're obligated to do so, but then there are other players involved in determining exactly how many dollars are going to be asked to support that. At a certain point, we haven't gotten there yet, but at a certain point early on in the process, there is a meeting with the Local Government Commission in Raleigh called the Pre-Application Conference. And at that meeting, it would be expected that there would be representatives of the school board, county commissioners, and the Local Government Commission. And prior to that time, there will have been submitted background information about the projects and the needs. And at that pre-application conference, that's when they will really come to a decision in terms of how much is the appropriate amount. And then there is a lengthy process that you go through to get the, what you're ultimately doing is you are adopting a bond order that authorizes a certain amount of general obligation bonds to be issued for school purposes. My understanding is there's likely also going to be one for community college, so that'll all go at the same time. The referendum would be in November. The length of the process, it's too late to get anything for May. And so that's the process. A draft calendar has been circulated around that would require action to get started in the next couple months in earnest. So really, other than some meetings between you guys, the next step would be to go ahead and try to schedule a pre-application conference with the local government commission, and for the two boards to try to, in collaboration, try to come up with an idea in terms of how much in the way of school bonds are going to be sought. And as I have explained to the commissioners, when you do a referendum, if you put a referendum for school bonds in front of the voters and they approve it, basically it's going to authorize a certain dollar amount to be issued for school purposes. That referendum, if it's approved, it's good for 7 years. You can also have it extended for an additional 3 years at the end of that time through a process. So basically, whatever amount of GO bonds is ultimately approved by the voters, then it becomes a matter of, it doesn't have to all be issued at once. It can be issued strategically over the time period to meet the needs and without borrowing too much money at one time. And that's a later process that's involved in terms of when you actually issue the money. I think I've also shared with the commissioners, and we'll just share with you that what a successful bond referendum does, it authorizes bonds to be issued for that purpose, does not necessarily obligate that they be issued for that purpose. I mean, there are funding needs that have been agreed upon, but the GO bonds really is like an additional, it's an additional funding source. So you could still go forward and decide that these particular projects are going to be funded with something else other than bonds, pay as you go, some other sort of debt, some other sort of revenue. So doing the bond referendum basically gives you the legal ability to issue debt, but there's still decisions down the road whether that's the tool you'll actually use. But there is then obviously a funding obligation that has been agreed upon. So that's a very synthesized, condensed version of the process and the players. So be happy to answer any questions, any follow-up.
Commissioners, do you have any questions? Do we?
I think the floor is open for all of us to ask questions, if we have them. I don't have a specific one other than you said, you used the word obligated to do it. And I guess we were under the impression that the commissioners could decide or could not decide whether to take it and put it on the ballot. But did you say obligated to do it, meaning we've requested it and now they're obligated to put it on the ballot in November?
Yes, you've requested a bond referendum, and they for schools, and they are obligated to put a bond referendum on the ballot in November. But the amount is yet to be determined.
Right.
That's something that
They can set whatever amount they want to set.
Well, I mean, I think it sounds to me like the boards, there's going to be discussion between the boards in terms of what the overall funding needs are going to be, looking forward, some years into the future. And I would hope and expect what usually happens is through a collaborative effort that the two boards come up with their number, and then you go to Raleigh and talk to the local government commission, and that's when the number really gets decided. And I've been involved in situations where that number has been reduced by the local government commission. They may think it's too much money to go out at one time.
Okay.
So from this point forward, it's very much a a collaborative effort, but yes, they are, the commissioners are now under the obligation to put forth, to actually hold a referendum for school bonds, but everything else is, still undecided as to dollar amounts.
So as I understand it, we will be getting a timeline
Yes.
that will spell out the actions that this board needs to take, and in fact, the actions that Cabarrus County Schools, Kannapolis City Schools, and Rowan Cabarrus Community College need to take in order to potentially be a part of a bond referendum. Okay, and so during those discussions with all of the groups, then we will make a determination of the total amount of a bond and the projects that will be on the bond. And we will actually vote. We are under, as I understand, an obligation for a November bond referendum. We will still need to vote for the bond referendum. There are a number of votes. It's not just one vote.
Right.
And so Steve will guide us in that process along with staff members to make sure that we follow the process correctly. And we will address all three entities' requests and come up with which ones we wish to place on a bond referendum. And likewise, we would have similar discussion. Let's be very optimistic that the economy is doing well and that we do end up with extra funds that we would be able to save, which our Schedule D that we looked at, Plan D that we looked at, has, where we would actually be building funds and be able to pay cash for schools. So we could say we're going to, in all honesty, I thought that Mount Pleasant Middle School would be an option to put on a bond referendum. So we've already addressed that to some degree tonight, so that may not be one that goes on there. It may be that there's more money and that one ends up being paid totally by cash. So there's some flexibility in there. We just have to go through the rest of the steps and get to that point.
That's correct.
And Steve will make sure that we do things correctly. Yes, sir.
And Steve, could you give some guidance to both boards about kind of the level of specificity? Obviously, we've talked about maintenance items like roofs and other stuff. At what level do you start detailing specific repair, maintenance, renovation projects? I know that's something that everyone's been struggling with in terms of how much detail you list specific projects when you're doing a referendum of this nature.
Well, I'm going to say, before you answer that, this is Mark Enriquez, which is the attorney for the Cabarrus County Board of Education, so
yes,
lawyer to lawyer. Let me say that in our discussions, and I believe in some of your discussions, there are some items that we do not wish to finance, that we would rather pay cash for, because they're not going to last as long as a 20-year bond. So there's been discussions about that, which will come into play. And I believe, I don't know if the county manager would like to come back up if you had anything you want to add, but we have asked staff to work together on how your needs would fit into a capital improvement plan so that we can try to put those needs in there and figure out where they're going to hit and where the cash flow is and try to make that work. So I think that's also part of the answer to it. This board has said that there's some things that we don't want to finance for 20 years. I think that would be more as far as, but I think, Mike, if you want to chime in on the discussions that we've had about the different types of projects.
Yeah, I think, Madam Chair, you touched on it very well. The schools process actually starts tomorrow, and their first couple of meetings are going to be concerning capital projects. So we'll have, after that, hopefully in a few weeks, we'll have a more detailed as to what are those projects and exactly what are those timelines when we need them, and then we can plug them into if we have enough cash available, or if that's what goes on the bond. If we need to bridge something, or if we have all cash, whatever that is, then we'll be able to make a decision at that time. Do we need to borrow money, or can we pay cash? But I don't think we can make that 100% decision until we know your needs and timelines. Not just your needs, but we need to know timelines so that we can plug it in. So, as the chair said, preference is to make these repairs with cash, as many of those as we can, as long as we can keep up. And the main school buildings, the larger projects, as that's what we would propose for a bond. But hopefully it's not a very large bond, if that's the direction we go.
Mark, let me answer your question this way, a little bit in the reverse. I think at this point that the next step that both boards need to be preparing for is the pre-application conference with the local government commission, which under some draft schedules probably is going to happen sometime, late March, early April in there. At those meetings, and probably prior to those meetings, I can get the fellow from the local government commission in touch with you, and he can tell you exactly what they need. But I think at those meetings, that's when you're going to need to be presenting detailed information about the projects, the costs. At a certain point in time, some of this stuff has to be brought down to bid before they will not let you not actually include the number, but before you can actually sell the bonds. There's going to have to be bids in hand. So I think you're going to have to get relatively detailed on those for that meeting. When we do the actual referendum, the bond language, you put a question before the voters. My personal preference, and a lot of people's preference, is to try to preserve flexibility because circumstances change, and you might need to move money from one thing to another, or at least preserve the option to do that. So the question that's put to the voters is usually not as specific as to the underlying projects. It's more as to a dollar amount in school facilities, so on and so forth. But the detail comes in the underlying approval process at the local government commission, really.
Thanks, that's all very helpful.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at that process, whenever I'm over here,
Yeah.
let's see.
Over there.
Oh, sorry.
Hard to know who.
Yeah,
I heard it from the echo.
I understand. All right, so that process where both representatives from the school board and representatives from the commission board go in front of the LGC to present. So if we have let's see here. So we need to get our priorities in order of what we think is best. They'll have theirs, and then at the LGC, it will actually ultimately be ironed out there, and that will be the ultimate decision. Is that correct?
Well, I think the local government commission will probably be looking more for you guys to iron out in terms of the projects that you want to have bond authority for, or potential bond, and you may want to have some in there, again, just to have flexibility. But it's certainly at the pre-application conference that, they're going to tell you whether you think, if you think your referendum ought to be X dollars, they're going to tell you whether they think it, usually they won't tell you it needs to be more, but there have been occasions where they'll tell you it needs to be something less because, based on the finances and circumstances.
Right. Okay, so there'll be representatives from all three school systems as well as our board?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And, if we were to ask for $300 million, they might say you can't do that much. I don't think we're asking for that much. Could be wrong. You guys surprise me all the time, but I don't think that's the case.
I will
But like
share,
when we talked, they more than likely, if we were to do something along the lines that's been discussed, then they probably wouldn't have too much, they probably wouldn't say too much about it as long as we follow all the process. That's the way I understand it.
yes, that's right. That's right.
May I ask a question about the figures? And first, I would like to say to our school board, by our actions tonight, I hope that you can see that this board, as it's construction right now, is wholly committed to public education. You got a 1.5% increase in your supplement at the beginning of the year. You got a 25% increase tonight. At the beginning of the year, you had $0 allocated out of our cash to your buildings, and after tonight, you've got $29 million. So we are dedicated to public education and know what a valuable service that you provide to our community, and we appreciate what you do. I wanted to ask a question about the items that you have on the bond. Maybe, Blake, you could answer these for me. You said you had put in Mount Pleasant at about $26 million. About what is your budget for purposes of how you calculated the bond number for Royal Oaks?
I think we had multiple discussions, and I'm going to ask my other board members if they remember more than I do to chime in. We had multiple discussions on our and had dollar amounts attached to them, and at the end, I think flexibility was a word we used, so it's interesting that the council uses that as well. And I don't remember in our discussions what specific dollar amount we had at Royal Oaks. We just decided that we wanted to have that one as a priority with Mount Pleasant Middle and just basic capital improvements in Culture and Webb, Central Cabarrus, and the Glenn Center. So I don't remember off the top of my head what dollar amount we put on Royal Oaks.
Well, it's a little bit difficult for us. We were at even our work session the other night, and Dr. Shepard had asked us to go ahead and vote on the bond, just put it on so that we could get it on to May. But we don't have any of the numbers. What are you thinking you would spend on Coltrane Webb?
Can I ask that it's 7 o'clock and we haven't gotten through the first 3 items? I think that we're going to have a lot of discussion on
If they would just give me
Coltrane Webb
I'll make this quick.
But, I mean,
I would
but-
just
but-
like to know a number on each of these things that they have on their list, because they've got to a number of 60 million, and they passed a resolution, so I would like to know what their budget is for those 3 items that they
I
have there,
understand.
and
I
I'll be
think
done.
that- I understand. I think that
And
it would be,
I guess the answer to that,
their board has not approved a dollar amount, so I don't think that's fair to say that. We've gone through this numerous times. They've talked about a couple numbers. Let's let them do their process. Let Kannapolis City Schools, let Rowan Cabarrus, and we will set up a meeting and we will get the information that we need based on the timeline that we need to follow, so that we can have good information and good numbers to go forward with.
Yeah,
And then we can go from there. And I just think that it's 7 o'clock. We came at 4 o'clock with the intent of meeting in a joint meeting with them. I did not think that these 3 items would take us 3 hours to get through, so I really would like to help move this on.
They asked for us to vote on these a week
I
ago
understand.
Thursday, and I'm just simply asking for an estimate of what those 3 things would cost, and since they asked us to vote on
$60
them,
million,
On the board
but
for 60 million.
for those 3 items, but,
I would
you
like to know what the breakdown
I-
is.
Just put 20 on each one.
let's just, I mean, let's try to keep on, we're gonna spend a lot more time on these, and I think that we can move forward, and that's, we need to move on and not get bogged down tonight on, and then they get some work done, and they come back, and it's a different number, and then it's gonna be, well, you gave us this number before. I mean, we keep going round and round, so can we just give them time to get their list together? You've taken Mount Pleasant Middle School off of that list now. Let's give them time to look at their list and come up with their items along with Kannapolis City Schools, and we'll decide. We're not going to do a bond that's big enough to cover everything they need and everything the other 2 need, so let's set a meeting, and we've got February and March to muck through it.
I was
Please.
just wanting to think about this over the next month or so, and it's important to put numbers to it, that's all.
I agree it is important to put numbers to it. I'd rather give them the appropriate opportunity as the school building experts and programming that this board is not, to be able to move forward. So, any other questions for Steve on the process for a bond? Okay, I want to thank you for staying with us for I'm sorry, yes, sir?
So what's the timeline as to when
We're going to
we have
get
to
that.
make decisions, and then, I mean, in
Yeah.
order to be ready for an election?
Yeah, we don't have that right now tonight to give you an exact timeline, but Steve and our staff will be working on that, and your staff will be involved, and there will be plenty of transparency. You will not be told you need something tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks.
I'm going to get in touch with the fella at the local government commission that, rides herd on this. And I'm going to ask Mark for one of his cards, and I'm going to ask him to get in touch with Mark and send him, what you guys need to pull together. And so give you as much information as we can, so.
I had one other question. Now, the voters, do they vote project by project, or they vote on the whole?
No, they will
the whole
vote on the
thing? So-
bond.
Yeah, they vote on the dollar amount, yeah, yes or no.
Whatever the dollar amount is, yeah, it's a yes or no vote on the bond. Okay? Whatever we determine to put on the referendum, but now, as we found out, there will be a November referendum on something for schools.
well,
But we don't know the amount, and we don't know exactly how much you're going to get versus Kannapolis versus Rowan Cabarrus. Not at this time.
Can I ask a question? You implied during the discussion about the bond and the length of time that it would be 7 years, 3 years additional, but implied in that is that we don't have to use all the money that we get for the bond. So it truly is, we can take out segments at a time, and use that revenue but we don't have to spend all of the bond money. Is that correct? Did I understand that correctly?
No, that's not well, let me answer the question a different way. The time period I referred to is the time period within which you can issue, let's just use the number $10 million is approved. That's just my number. I haven't talked to anybody. So you have authority to issue up to $10 million of GO bonds. You can issue those at any time over the next 7 years. You can issue them all at one time. You can issue them in $1,000 increments, and so you have a lot of flexibility. The term of the bonds under current LGC policy is about 20 years that they would have to be repaid. To be just totally accurate legally, I mean, technically, they would be under no obligation to actually issue bonds to fund anything if they funded it with another source. So they could determine, next year that they've got extra money, and now they take some project that they had initially planned to do with bonds and use that as pay-go. And so it gives them the authority to use bonds, but to what extent the debt's ultimately issued over that 7-year period, that is determined, at a later time as the needs present themselves. And so there's, I guess the ultimate answer is, and there's a technical possibility they might never issue the bonds if they didn't have to, or came up with another funding source to, pay for the agreed upon expenditures.
Okay, let me ask one last question, then, okay, one more, and then we're going to move on.
Let me mirror back. So what I understand is, if it was a $10 million bond and we used $5 million of it and then it expired, that would be it. We would just have issued $5 million worth of debt, and that's all we would have been responsible for as a county.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to, you still have the discretion not to issue any of the debt, but you have to come up with another funding source, and that's the thing.
So the bond would commit us to, the projects that we identify in the bond commits us to doing those projects. That is one of the, but if, let's say that we take one of those projects and that we intend to use bond funds for and we pay cash for, can we then select a different project?
That's where the flexibility
That's
comes
where the
in.
flexibility, okay. So there, we will have some conference calls, and we're going to diligently work on this as we move forward, especially over February and March, to make sure that we get everything done correctly.
And I guess what I would say is, to me, I don't know that I would look at the agreement to, I think there is an underlying agreement that you're going to fund a project in some manner, and then the bond becomes, so I think you have the agreement as to what projects are going to be funded, and then the bond is just one possibility. Some will go in, some will not.
And I would say that if we go forward and say that, for the benefit of this conversation, that Royal Lakes Elementary School will be replaced as a result of this bond referendum, then we were all committing that that's where it's going to go. And that money is not going to then go to a yet unnamed new elementary school somewhere else in the county that, there becomes a huge housing project. If we commit, if we agree what's on the bond and we agree that these are the projects on the bond, then I think that fair's fair. That's what the taxpayers are voting for. That's what we're putting forward. So I think that we need to be very cognizant of that, and that we need to make sure that we are good stewards of any funds that we have available to us. So, please, last question. Make sure you're on the microphone.
Madam Chairman, thank you. What role does the county's current bond rating play in these proceedings? My understanding is that we have a very high, strong bond rating. What does that mean for the process? Not the ultimate vote that voters in Cabarrus County would have, but does it imply that we are in a good financial position as those? I'm putting words in your mouth possibly, but can you explain what our bond rating pertains to this bond that we would vote on?
Well, okay. Your bond rating has to do really with your existing debt, obligations, things like that. They haven't factored in to your bond rating this debt. At a certain point, the bond rating will factor in this debt once it's authorized, whatever it is. That's part of what is the overall process in terms of when you talk with the local government commission. Those are all factors. The strength of the county's bond rating, the big benefit that it will generate is that it will allow the county to borrow at a lower interest cost than a county with a lesser bond rating could borrow. So there will be, at a certain point in time, there will be a direct financial benefit from the county's bond rating when these bonds are issued. Okay.
Yeah, and I will say that I don't believe that any of us are going to do anything to jeopardize the good bond rating that the county has. And I think that will be utmost the commissioner's mind, and I think it would also be on your mind, that you would not want us to do anything to hurt the county. So I think that would be something we would go into together. So, again, Steve, thank you very much. You've been very patient with us for a couple hours to get
look forward to working with all of you.
To get to you to this point. So thank you very much.
Sure.
You want to take a break? They want us to take a break. Hey, for once, you usually say I need to take a break for the cameraman. So apparently, let's take, honest to goodness, no more than 10 minutes. 5 is even better. Be back in our spaces, ready to rock and roll. Thank you.